Chapter 256. A soft trembling sound rang through the void. With the human-faced arachnid as a living example, it was hard for Luonan not to associate it with the heavily chained crow. Over 10 days ago, Luonan had truly constructed the format and entered the level of, "My heart's a prison." The speed of Luonan's progress was inconceivable even to Luonan. But he knew very well that up until now, the embodiment of his greatest ability was still the format pyramid and the heavily chained crow. This was the precious treasure left to him by his grandfather. Everything was born from this. Luonan was still unable to completely understand the mysteries within even to this day. He could only say that he had comprehended some basic principles. That was a frame. From the changes in the altar frame, it could be seen that the so-called dark chains were very much like the materialization of some high-level order frame. Luonan was unable to understand how his grandfather was able to assimilate this order frame into medicine, breathing, and visualization. It was branded onto the body of a cultivator, allowing them to grasp this high-level technique. But the most important thing right now was still the application. Luonan pondered to himself that the directivity of his heavily chained crow was not much inferior to Wang's. It seemed that the crow was able to follow Luonan down a distance. But what was the point of doing that? By Xinyan and the others' mockery, Fairchild's warning at the same time, and all the previous lessons. Had he not suffered enough? Without thinking any further, the dark chains materialized and pierced through the void, piercing through Bei's head. This wasn't the first time Luonan had used the heavily chained crow on a living person, but this was certainly the first time he had a clear goal of order. Luonan did not understand or pay attention to the specific circulation of blood energy. His attention was completely focused on the effect of the order frame on the nature of chaos. To say that it was useful was an overestimation for him. Luonan had never been an expert in interfering with the material plane. Now, the direction of his development had begun to shift towards pure observation. To a large extent, he had given up on interacting with the material plane in exchange for outstanding performance in mental sensing. It was impossible for Luonan to turn Bei into a marionette. It was also impossible for Luonan to forcefully turn Bei onto a new orbit of order. All he did was guide Bei to see through the chaos mist and the higher-level new order that was eroded by the chaos elements. With this, he could sort out the structure of Bei's body and soul and alleviate the damage caused by the chaos element's erosion. The problem was that Bei had already lost his basic control. Even if there was a clear answer in front of him, it would be difficult for him to follow up. Luonan had long since anticipated this. This was the final fork in the road. Luonan gave Fairchild one last reminder. "This is my order frame." What? But Luonan did not say anything. However, he did not say a word. He half knelt down and punched Bei in the chest. Bei spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered all over Child's face. The latter was unfazed and threw another punch. However, at this time Bei, who was paralyzed on the ground, straightened his upper body and used his chest to block Fairchild's fist halfway. At this moment their eyes met. Fairchild raised his chin slightly. "If you want to live, follow me." Bei gasped for air. The pain caused by the corrosion and symbiosis of the chaotic elements was still ongoing. Inside and outside of his body, every blood vessel was twisting, and every muscle was twitching. In the midst of chaos, the human body's habitual functions and order had long since changed beyond recognition, and there was no possibility of recovery. Chaos. World Nan. To say to the human body. And the human body function. And this was something that he was unable to accomplish in a short amount of time. And Luonan was currently demonstrating a certain possibility for him. Bei could only comply. He had no other choice. Bei closed his eyes. His breathing became hurried and chaotic. Then it suddenly stopped. A few seconds later it resumed and the cycle repeated. At the same time, the muscles, bones, blood vessels and internal organs of his body squirmed crazily. They matched the rhythm of his breathing. After repeating it 5 times, which meant that he had failed 5 times, Bei suddenly let out a wild roar. The back of his head slammed against the floor of the ruins. His body twitched violently, and his blood vessels bulged all over his skin, forming an ugly and ferocious image. Time passed second by second. The dark clouds and turbid mist stirred by the giant shadow pillar corroded layer after layer of the building. Parts of the building collapsed from time to time. The skyscraper was on the verge of collapse. A portion of the dark clouds and turbid mist came over. Of course they could not harm Fair. They could do nothing to Luonan, but they were inexplicably attracted to the roaring Bei. They went in and out of his mouth and nose. It was as if they were making some sort of exchange. Fair was unmoved. He watched all of this in silence. Hiss. A long breath rang out. Baze suddenly exerted his strength. In a short 2 seconds he actually sucked in all the mist around his body. His painfully struggling body swelled slightly. Then it suddenly froze and he collapsed back onto the floor. He gasped for breath. His chest rose and fell clearly, but his breathing had already entered the range of that of a normal person. This meant that Baze had found a new order of life amidst the chaos and disorder. His ice-cold eyes pointed at the night sky. However, this might not be a satisfactory ending for Baze. His malevolent aura was like a flame beneath a layer of ice. It was weak but tenacious. Luo Nan knew that this brother's gaze was directed at him. But what could he do? An interesting change appeared in the structure of the pyramid. Baze's figure silently appeared on the staff level. This was the result of Baze reconstructing the structure of his body and soul in accordance to the established order with the help of the heavily chained crow. Luo Nan had already explained this to Fair in advance. Fair tacitly agreed, but Baze might not be completely convinced. Fine, Baze would definitely reject Baze. Luo Nan did not have many examples of what sort of restrictions one would have to endure as a member of the format pyramid. The comparison was not strong. Wraith Sign, who was on the skill level, was very obedient. Cat Eyes, who was on the student level, was very unruly. As for Baze, who was on the staff level, the heavily chained crow suddenly trembled violently. Baze's body fiercely twitched amidst the rattling vibrations. Deep within the structure of his body and soul, a hook that had long since been warped and deformed shattered. In an instant, an obscure fluctuation penetrated through the air. Luo Nan was startled and shocked. He cried out in his mind, but before he could react, and Wang's telepathic thoughts were like a long sword drawn from a furnace. They sliced through the air, bringing with them an intense burning pain. That hook was certainly the method An Wang used to control Ablatum Knights like Baze. Even though Baze had been abandoned by An Wang, it was hard to avoid alarming An Wang when this sort of change occurred. However, the reason for An Wang's intense reaction was not as simple as losing Baze. Luo Nan had realized his control over Baze. He had erected a restraining order on top of Baze's chaotic essence. In a certain sense, this was tantamount to controlling a portion of the power of the demon behind the scenes, even if it was a portion that had been abandoned. This was just like An Wang trying to control a continent. He had turned the sky and earth upside down, but he had yet to obtain any results. But Luo Nan, who was next to An Wang, had first taken control of a small island that had separated from the main body of the continent due to a volcanic earthquake. This was probably what it felt like. Metaphors could describe reality, but in the end they could not replace reality. Luo Nan and An Wang did not have the relationship of an island and a continent. There was no vast ocean between them. There was only an indescribable distance of sensing. It was too dangerous. If Luo Nan was An Wang, he would probably think the same. Plus, there was another element that seeped in. Chapter 257. Luo Nan was used to hearing the sound of the heavily chained crow trembling. Of course, that was to himself. How could there be any sound on the mental plane? All there was the corresponding energy and information. In the past, the heavily chained crow spent most of its time hidden in the deepest depths of the mental plane. It was only known to outsiders for a limited period of time. But right now, An Wang's depth on the mental plane was not inferior to Luo Nan's. He could clearly sense the relevant energy and information. Yes, An Wang had certainly heard it. There was Baze in front and there was vibrations behind. It was unknown how An Wang understood this series of changes. But it was certain that An Wang was paying close attention to this. He even temporarily stopped controlling the demon. The heart of the cocoon of light in the holy space was shockingly quiet at this moment. All movements had stopped. Correspondingly, An Wang's telepathic thoughts chopped toward Luo Nan once more. Even Child next to him could feel the scorching sensation of the red-hot longsword, let alone Luo Nan himself. Withdraw your senses. Don't provoke him. Child's judgment made Luo Nan speechless. But soon Child realized his mistake. He furrowed his brows and cast his gaze in the direction of the giant shadow pillar. An Wang's movements were unfathomable. As for the demon, it was admittedly quite manic, but the chaotic energy and information it brought could be viewed as background noise. It could be easily filtered out. Because of this, the energy and information in this warped deep space instantly became much more refreshing. For a time, all that was left was the faint sound of the heavily chained crow. It grew clearer and clearer, louder and louder. Luo Nan felt a bit of pressure in his heart. He discovered that the source of the energy and information that resonated with the chains did not seem to be him alone. The shaking of the heavily chained crow gave rise to echoes in this warped deep space. The transmission of energy and information was certainly not in the form of sound waves. It was far too indiscernible. If one really wanted to find the source, one could only analyze it layer by layer to search for clues and determine the direction. Presumably, and Wang had discovered this point, which was why he stopped his actions to reduce the interference. But no matter how much interference there was, it was too difficult for Luo Nan. His analytical ability was far from this level, so he was at a loss for a time. Oh, hold on. Idiot. Luo Nan cursed to himself. His brain had become stiff from the series of unforeseen events. Actually, he didn't need to go through all this trouble. The crucial information could be completely seen from the heavily chained crow. His attention returned to the heavily chained crow. In just a few short seconds, a string in his heart was forcefully plucked. The judgment of the so-called echo, just now, was torn apart. The sound in the deep space was not an echo but a resonance. Using this concept of physics, the current state of the heavily chained crow could be described as being at the same frequency as something else. One side affected the other side and the other side affected the other side. The originally minuscule amplitude suddenly expanded. Of course, it made it impossible for the heavily chained crow to hide, but it also made an even more obscure existence in the depths of space appear. Hualala. Roar. The second half was the roar of a demon. Ever since the sound of the chains reverberated on this plane, this powerful demon had become extremely irritable. The power that was about to withdraw from the logic world swept out as a form of venting. The high floors of the building collapsed one after another wherever it passed. Rubble flew everywhere. Spectators like Fairchild, Baze, and Jing Xiao had to dodge in a hurry to avoid being caught in the crossfire. Of course, the demon's attack involved the mental plane. The corresponding sweep was extremely powerful. If it was possible, it would certainly crush the few little fleas inside and outside of its own domain to death. Then it would chew and swallow them. However, it was not easy to accomplish this. The current Luo Nan was no longer the fledgling who would tremble with fear when facing the human-faced arachnid siege hammer. Right now, his sensing method of pure observation manifested a marvelous advantage. This completely effortless method allowed Luo Nan's mental senses to melt into the air. It was formless and incorporeal, but it was everywhere. Under the storm-like mental attack, Luo Nan's mental senses might distort for a moment, but the recoil force he received was extremely small. It didn't even hurt or itch. Under these circumstances, it did not matter whether the buildings of the logic world survived or not. To put it bluntly, it was nothing more than a silhouette that intervened between the void and reality. The limit of the logic world's endurance was the major problem. As the demon's power continued to bombard the world, a clear tremor appeared in the night sky. Corresponding ripples appeared frequently, warping and turbulent. The world was on the verge of collapse. Fairchild and Baze were both nimble people when the skyscraper collapsed. It was hard for them to be affected by their injuries, so it was easy for them to dodge the attack. However, Fairchild's expression changed a bit when he saw the ripples in the void. Withdraw. Fairchild's words were directed at Luo Nan. He and Baze did not move. After the logic world was established, mental senses could not enter and exit. If a living person wanted to leave, they would need to obtain the permission of Ouyang Qin, the creator of the logic world, or they would need to forcefully break through the spatial barrier. The latter would undoubtedly shake the foundation of the logic world's existence and accelerate the collapse of the logic world. It was just like what the demon was doing. Under normal circumstances, all Fairchild needed to do was give Ouyang Qin a heads up if he wanted to leave. However, it was unknown how much control Ouyang Qin had over the logic world right now. The degree of damage to the logic world had far exceeded the normal limits. It was like a scrap machine. No matter how superior its performance was in the past, once a critical part of it was damaged, it would be extremely difficult to start it up again. This was something that Ouyang Qin would have found hard to imagine before he created it. As for Luo Nan, he did not respond to Fairchild's call. He did not retreat either. It was not that he did not want to listen. It was that he did not dare. Fairchild saw the limits of the material plane, but Luo Nan saw the even more chaotic mental plane. At the very least, the warped spatial structure could still be used on the material plane of the logic world. However, on the mental plane, various critical structures had already begun to collapse. One warped curtain after another locked to the material plane. They bounced and drifted in retaliation. They intertwined with each other, turning the mental plane, especially the deep regions, into a mess. Luo Nan really did not dare to rashly charge in. From the results of his clairvoyance, the stability of the logic world had suffered irreversible damage after the demon's attack. The curtain structure of the mental plane had completely degenerated into a labyrinth trap. It was like hundreds and thousands of tape measures had been stretched out and woven into bizarre loops. If a soul body were to enter and exit, a single mishap would cause him to be lost in the endless depths of space. Even if he came out alive, only the heavens knew where he would be thrown to. A few dozen kilometers or 100 kilometers was fine, but what if it was 1,000 kilometers or 10,000 kilometers? The bottom of the ocean? The boundless space. Chapter 258. In the warped deep space, the energy and information radiated by the deformed structure of the logic world. If forcefully analyzed, it would be equivalent to the sound of snapping. The situation on the mental plane grew more and more complicated. Luo Nan did not listen to Fairchild's suggestion and quickly left, but he intercepted the extension of his mental senses. He did not go deeper and attempted to retract it. It was only now that he realized that the demon's venting was actually an opportunity to escape. After the structure of the logic world collapsed, the plane it was on became a curtain that had already been unhooked. It was a rapidly retracted tape measure. It severed its connection with the logic world and headed into deep space. In this way, Wang, who had been paying close attention to Luo Nan, had no choice but to make a choice. Actually, it was not really a choice. The heart of the cocoon of light attached to the foundation of the demon's power would certainly leave with it. The red-hot longsword style of attention was finally shifted away. Luo Nan's mind involuntarily relaxed, but he soon discovered that he had relaxed too early. The demon had left. And Wang had left. The familiar yet unfamiliar vibrating sound grew clearer and clearer. It caused the heavily chained crow to sway a bit more than it should have. The resonance continued. The heavily chained crow was affected by the distant information. Even though Luo Nan had deliberately distanced himself from the matter, the resonant pull still kept him on this plane. It hooked his consciousness and drew him closer. Luo Nan's mind was a bit absent-minded. The pulling connection had more or less injected some energy and information fragments. After being analyzed, they became blurry images. It was as if he was in a dream. Due to the disparity in his analytical abilities, Luo Nan was not sure what he saw. At this time, a vibration was transmitted to him on the mental plane. It was a message from Ouyang Chen. The president locked onto the position of the plane and chased after him. This was the first time Luo Nan personally experienced the mental senses of an extraordinary. There was no pressure at all. Only the purest of information was transmitted over. An effective division of labor is more important than working overtime. Before Luo Nan could truly understand what was going on, his mind was shaken. He felt an astonishing storm set off on the mental plane. A powerful force coming from an unknown source swept over with a rumble. The great wind blew and the light swayed. The range and level it covered was extremely vast. The Star River scene drawn by Luo Nan instantly turned blurry. The sudden assault of the storm should have affected Luo Nan a step further, but Ouyang Chen's intent was here. An invisible protective wall was erected, blocking the follow-up attack. The problem was that under the influence of this, the mental plane, which was not peaceful in the first place, became even more chaotic. Curtains and tape measures flew everywhere. The specific location of the demon and Wang was immediately drowned in the chaotic flow of information. It was difficult to grasp. This was a cover. Luo Nan immediately made a preliminary judgment. This sudden storm had come far too coincidentally. It was hard for one not to suspect the intentions behind it. Who did it? Did the Order of Justice still have hidden experts in Xia City? Guild Master. They should be here soon. Luo Nan's thoughts were completely known to Ouyang Chen through communication on the mental plane. Ouyang Chen didn't even have the basic fluctuations in his emotions. He gave Luo Nan an evaluation of the sudden change in the situation, then he gave Luo Nan some background information. And Wang, the target he's trying to control, holds a very important secret. Many people and powers are interested in it. I think it's necessary for the association to seize the initiative. If we can lock onto that demon's position, that would be the best. Luo Nan was speechless. How could they lock onto it? The demon had destroyed the logic world, causing chaos. It was unknown where the mental storm came from. It was truly extraordinary to use it to cover the retreat. Even if it was Ouyang Chen in a short amount of time, another change occurred in the void before Luo Nan could finish his thought. Another force surged up. It was like a tall cliff that suddenly rose up. It suppressed the void, blocking the mental storm that filled the air in the distance. The chaotic situation on the mental plane inexplicably eased up quite a bit in this moment of absent-mindedness. This sort of suppressive ability to go from motion to stillness was much more brilliant than pure destruction. But for some reason there was a feeling of danger as it suppressed here. It wasn't that it was unstable. Instead, there was an even more powerful and active essence within its majesty. Luo Nan had plenty of experience with mental senses, but this was the first time he had seen the spirit of, I am not the mountain comes and I will. In comparison, Fairchild was far too pure, and Ouyang Chen was calm and low-key from beginning to end. Their characteristics were not as distinct and unforgettable as this person. Who was this person? It looked like he was on their side. Why didn't he make a move when the situation was better just now? Luo Nan muttered to himself, but Ouyang Chen was not the least bit surprised. He just transmitted a new thought over. I was thrown too far just now. I don't have enough strength to lock onto the demon's position. I need you to help me confirm. Ouyang Chen magnanimously admitted that Luo Nan was more outstanding than him in terms of tracking and sensing on the mental plane. Ouyang Chen admitted it, but Luo Nan found it a bit hard to accept. I didn't lock onto it. The only thing Luo Nan could confirm right now was that the demon's position was in the extreme depths of the mental plane. The construction of the logic world distorted the curtain, causing it to approach the material plane. This gave the demon the opportunity to appear. Right now, the structure of the logic world had collapsed, and the curtain had returned to its original position. This was the time of upheaval, and they interacted with each other. It was simply like the scattered pages of a book dancing in the gale. The difficulty of finding the demon and in one right now was equivalent to locking onto a page of a book and searching for a single stroke error amidst the densely packed words. Just thinking about this project made Luo Nan feel a chill run down his back. He didn't have a back to chill for the time being. Ouyang Chen was very clear about the difficulty of this matter. He had no intention of pressuring Luo Nan. A general direction is fine. You can combine it with this diagram. It was still pure information that cut in, but this time the amount was much greater. It made Luo Nan a bit dizzy. The information that seeped in was just as Ouyang Chen said. It was similar to an image, but it was far too complex. A one-way view and a three-dimensional diagram were no longer able to represent it. After the analysis was done, it was like Luo Nan was stuffed into an immersion device, allowing him to personally experience the complexity and richness of the image. This was the benefit of communicating on the mental plane. Luo Nan soon understood that this was the structural design diagram of the logic world. After combing out the general outline, Luo Nan felt at first glance that the structural model of the logic world was like a thick sponge cushion. It surrounded everything in all directions. There were 3 to 4 layers stacked inside and outside, and then they pressed down together from the outermost layer. Luo Nan could represent the material plane, while the sponge cushion represented the mental plane. The higher levels of the mental plane exerted force, forcefully distorting the overlapping layers of structure. This caused the extremely distant mental plane to tear apart the barrier in the middle, directly interfering with the material plane. That was probably how it was. Luo Nan finally understood the basic method of constructing the logic world. Of course, it was absolutely not easy to accomplish this. It was impossible to do without the power of an extraordinary. Plus, how many layers of sponge cushions? Was there a problem with the thickness? Luo Nan could sense that the mental plane was also a multi-layered structure, but the description of 1,000 layers of curtains should be more accurate. The deeper he went into the mental plane, the more intense this feeling became. Either the layers overlapped or they floated here and there. Oh, it should be a simplified model. How could the difficulty of calculating the deformation of just 3 to 5 layers be the same as calculating the deformation of hundreds to thousands of layers? Even if Ouyang Chen could calculate it, Luo Nan probably wouldn't be able to receive it. Luo Nan found a reasonable explanation, and his mind calmed down quite a bit. Since he was going to start with this model, the slightest difference would lead to a deviation of 1,000 miles. There was no hope for precision. He thought for a bit and drew a circle with his mind on this image. This was the area he felt was the most suitable. With this circle, he felt that there were at least 100 curtains that needed to be sorted out and confirmed. If the target curtains just happened to flutter a bit during this period of time, wasting all his previous efforts would be the only outcome. After drawing the circle, Luo Nan felt more and more unreliable. However, Ouyang Chen was quite satisfied with Luo Nan's answer. The direction is very convincing. We can give it a try. If it doesn't work, then we can study it again. But just as the thought arose, the turbulence on the mental plane, which had already subsided somewhat, suddenly became intense once more. The one who had provided cover for Nwang had repeatedly attacked the suppression cliff to no avail. He switched to a different method. He began to jump back and forth in various areas of the mental plane. Sometimes he even touched upon the material plane. He stirred the clouds and gave rise to waves. He directly affected the existence of the logic world. Everyone could see that the complete collapse of the logic world was only a matter of time. Ouyang Chen did not say anything else. He did not consult Luo Nan for his opinion either. He changed the portion of power that protected Luo Nan's mental senses a bit, sending the mental senses of this publicly acknowledged troublemaker out of the logic world. By the time Luo Nan came back to his senses, his soul body was floating outside the conjoined buildings of the real world. The main body of Frost River reality, which had been smashed to pieces in the logic world, was still safely and unscathed within the darkness. On the other hand, Luo Nan's Star River diagram was growing more and more chaotic. It was only at this time that Luo Nan discovered that the clash between the two powerful individuals was not limited to the logic world. Their powers possessed astonishing penetrative power and stability. They forcefully broke through the barriers of the logic world and transmitted their attacks to this plane. Even though Luo Nan's mental senses were completely powerless, the construction of his life sketches was truly affected. The pressure increased greatly. Luo Nan did not need to think too much. He began to rapidly shrink the range of his senses. From his perspective, this was something that could be done with a single thought. But soon he felt that something was wrong. The Star River diagram was a combination of life sketches. It was equivalent to a drawing that Luo Nan had personally drawn. This thing could not be withdrawn or deleted just because he wanted to. The corresponding information had already been deeply engraved in his mind. It had a real and tangible effect on Luo Nan. On the mental plane, information and energy were interconnected. When the range of his senses expanded out, it was nothing more than this. But when it suddenly contracted, the complex information could be compressed. The corresponding energy converged into a flood and brushed past Luo Nan's soul body. Whether it was his soul or his main body that was over a dozen kilometers away, all of them trembled. Luo Nan was no stranger to this feeling. Every time the sacrificial ritual was completed within the altar frame, every time the wraith sign obtained a great harvest from its hunt, the corresponding feedback would always arrive. His soul was growing stronger and trouble followed him like a shadow. This time it seemed to be a bit bigger. In the past, the endurance of his soul body had yet to reach its peak. But this time it was completely different. The range of his senses had shrunk by less than half. The swelling, exploding, and dizziness were endlessly magnified. This caused the gathering and operation of energy and information to show signs of losing control. What was even worse was that the two powerful individuals were clashing on the mental plane right now. Large amounts of useful and useless energy and information were stuffed in. His soul body had reached its limit. Or could it be said that the operating structure of energy and information, the amount of energy and information that the soul configuration could handle, had finally reached its limit? This loss of control caused the boundaries of the large amounts of information to blur and muddle together. Which was his self-awareness? Which were the insignificant memories and impressions on the periphery? These things were needed together. They interfered and influenced each other. It seemed that they would soon be unable to operate. No, this absolutely could not happen. Luo Nan knew that he could not continue like this. He needed a buffer, a flood outlet. He couldn't think of anything else right now. He could only rely on his previous successful experience. The external neuron. A bolt of lightning pierced his mind. Luo Nan's body bounced up and fell back down within the car. He began to convulse on the brink of death. The numbers of the instruments on the scene rose and fell violently. They didn't go all the way down. Instead, they jumped back and forth, each one off the charts. It was as if they had fallen into a powerful magnetic field. They no longer had any value as a reference. Everyone in the car, from Bai Xinyan to Zhang Yingying, from Shuelei to Red Fox, Cat Eyes and Papercut, were indescribably shocked. Rustling sounds rang in the ears of several members of the society at this time. The psychic wave network, which had stopped functioning for some time, began to restore communications. It was just that the first wave of information was quite strange. Amidst the rustling noise that was like the rise and fall of a tide, thoughts that opposed each other with equal harshness materialized into cold and hard words. All those who profane the holy object are to be purged by the order. Then let the war begin. The leisurely and unhurried reply was like a gentle breeze brushing past the ears. But the inner meaning of the words, as well as the corresponding strength and identity, made the members of the society look at each other in dismay. Then everyone turned their gazes to a single person at practically the same time. "What the hell is your boss doing?" Zhang Yingying spread her hands. She was rarely speechless. Chapter 259. Chirp 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 chirp. Xie Junping pursed his lips, flicked his tongue and made a tempting sound. Unfortunately, he had forgotten to place a loudspeaker at the front. It was a big mistake and it was destined to be of no help. Fortunately, the night vision camera at the front was still quite powerful. The wretched green image was rendered by colored light. When it was transmitted back, it had been restored to the greatest extent, and it was closer to reality. In the dim corner of the tree hole, a fat brown-haired creature could be seen. It was standing on its hind legs and moving its front claws. In its blunt mouth, the sharp upper and lower incisors were squeaking, and it looked vigilant and nervous. Yes, yes, come to daddy obediently. Xie Junping grinned, adjusted the joystick and pressed a button. The spider-shaped bionic mechanical platform locked onto the target, and the anesthetic needle shot out. The brown-haired creature could be seen trembling, and its upright body fell forward. Bingo! Xie Junping shouted and forcefully pulled the joystick, commanding the mechanical spider to sprint on the slippery steps. Its forelimbs stretched out, and blue and white electric flames appeared at the tips. Brown-haired rat, let your daddy love you. A perfect stab. The target was right in front of him. Who would have thought that the brown-haired rat, which was in a stiff state just a moment ago, would use its tail, which was almost 2/3 of its body length, to lash out like a whip. It actually knocked the electric forelimbs of the spider askew, and it was unscathed. Then its fat body leaped up and it was more than half a meter tall. It moved horizontally on the inner wall of the treehouse, and it walked 5 or 6 steps as if it was juggling. After landing, it jumped a few more times, avoiding the metal web that the mechanical spider shot out. It followed the steps all the way down, and in the blink of an eye, it disappeared around the corner, and the faint sound of falling into water could be heard. *CKU. Xie Junping temporarily ignored the face of the target of his delusion, and he almost smashed the joystick. Then he slapped his head hard and the immersion helmet made a dull sound. There was no time to be too upset. He called out, "Underwater view," and soon the scene in front of him changed into an even more murky and dark underwater area. The visual mode had already been adjusted. Thanks to the high-end underwater camera, the scene here was restored quite well. The bloody light of the setting sun pierced through the jungle and spread out in the shallow waters. Waves occasionally swept past and huge black fish swam past. It was full of vitality, as if he could touch it with his hand. It was as if he had personally entered the water. Xie Junping did not have the leisure to admire the underwater scenery. He pushed the joystick forward and the silent motor started. The military mini unmanned submarine that he had bought with a lot of money leapt out like a barracuda. The meaningless venting of his emotions made him lose the best opportunity. The brown-haired rat that had dived out from beneath the sandbar had leaped under the front of the mini-submarine. Its underwater speed was surprisingly fast. Xie Junping didn't say anything else. He gritted his teeth and activated the fire control system. Who knew that the target would swing its long tail and crash into the thick layer of mud underwater, stirring up a large amount of black mud and forcibly escaping from the lock of the fire control system. At this time, the mechanical spider that had entered automatic mode also crashed into the water. This thing was amphibious. Even if it couldn't float, it could still step on the mud at the bottom of the water to chase. This seems to be more effective. Xie Junping frantically tried to change the control mode, but how could he make it in time? In the end, he simply gritted his teeth and said, "Telekinesis mode." He immediately controlled the simpler mini-submarine and entered telekinesis mode. Combined with the automatic cruise function, it shuttled back and forth in the water. Xie Junping, on the other hand, endured the dizziness and strain of multitasking and controlled the mechanical spider to chase all the way. In the small lake in the swamp, muddy water flowed everywhere. The fish and prawns in the water and the birds and beasts on the lake were all alarmed. It was a mess. 5 minutes later, Xie Junping roared and smashed the joystick in his hand. Oh my God! Hu Huaying, who was coming in from the work elevator, saw a black shadow coming straight at his head. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and dodged to the side. The unidentified flying object brushed past his ear and heavily smashed into the inner wall of the elevator behind him. When he heard the explosion, his scalp went numb. He opened his mouth and wanted to curse, but he saw Xie Junping's helmet on top of his head. He was flustered and exasperated, but he almost twisted his neck because of his excessive emotions. Hu Huaying rolled his eyes and stopped cursing. But he didn't help either. He crossed his arms and watched Xie Junping torment himself. After Xie Junping took off his helmet and other peripherals, he mocked, "Brother Ping, you're getting more and more stingy. It's not a good time to go to Frost River Reality. Just a full set of equipment. A joystick is nothing. I'm not playing games. Full set of equipment my ass. What do you play if not games? You don't understand." Xie Junping wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he just waved his hand. He looked helpless, but the flames that burned in his eyes did not weaken in the slightest. He took a few deep breaths and adjusted his emotions. What did the social worker's office say? Hu Huaying shrugged. It seems the Mystic Arts Research Society is really going to shrink. They're holding a change of leadership ahead of time. Old Du is going to retire. I think the possibility of borrowing the slope to get out of the donkey is a bit higher. It said that there's a problem with one of their big financial backers. They might have to withdraw their investment. Xie Junping frowned and put down the helmet in his hand. He waved at Hu Huaying, indicating that the two of them should stop chatting in the control room and take the elevator to the surface. When he entered the elevator, he kicked the deformed multifunction joystick out of the elevator. It was obvious that he was still in a bad mood. The Rainbow Fund behind the Construction Society is very stable. So what? Hu Huaying spread her hands. I don't see any difference. The main thing is that our junior brother Luo has enemies all over the world. Li Xueqing of the Construction Society is certainly troublesome, but didn't Huang Bingjin go to the hospital and not come out? Those grandsons of the Divine Research Society are rolling up their sleeves and getting ready to demand justice. From what I see, it doesn't matter who takes over, it's all the same. What does junior brother Luo think? Xie Junping did not immediately answer. The elevator door opened and the two arrived at the tea house on the 3rd floor of Gear. Xie Junping randomly found a recliner and laid his body on it. He lay there paralyzed, looking up at the sky and sighing. The setting sun shone down, sending the last remnants of the day's warmth into the room. The AI service terminal promptly delivered black tea at a suitable temperature. Xie Junping reached his hand out, wanting to take it, but he was too lazy. He hooked his finger around the porcelain cup's handle and turned his eyes. He looked around at the layout of the society building. It had always been cold and cheerless, but it was subtly different from 2 weeks ago. Over 10 days of single-handedly managing was the result. After a long time, Xie Junping sighed. No one wants to give it to me. Ha! In any case, I don't want to give it to anyone. Xie Junping closed his eyes on the recliner. The evening wind blew through the forest. It seeped through the window and blended into the setting sun's afterglow, dispelling the cold air. It then gracefully coiled around the large courtyard of the 15-story building. It seemed to carry a rhythmic whistle, low, thin, and long. The restless mood outside all day could be unwittingly washed away here, leaving behind only a wondrous tranquility. Well, except for that brown-skinned rat's challenge. As his thoughts turned, Xie Junping's line of sight seemed to extend all the way to the withered tree sandbar, merging with the spider platform and the miniature submarine there. The black mud that had chased after him underwater had already calmed down. What kind of chase would it be next time? Thinking about it this way, it was quite exciting. A light challenge wasn't too bad either. Xie Junping suddenly stared blankly. How could the scene in his mind suddenly be so clear and real? It was as if the underwater camera had captured it and sent it over. He suddenly sat up, but before he could think clearly, Hu Huaying on the other side was already drunk. My brother Ping. Right now we're talking about junior brother Luo. Chapter 260. The sound of water rumbled in his ears, and the strong water current hit his face like a knife. The pain was still a small matter. Luo Nan strove to stop his footsteps, but the Frost River waterway, which was unpredictable, didn't give him any chance. The high-speed frigid water and ice flows wrapped around him. His feet practically didn't touch the ground as he continued to move forward. In the space of a few breaths, Luo Nan felt a pressure assault the top of his head. He abruptly pulled his head back. The hard rock cut through the water's surface and dangerously cut through his scalp. Above the water layer was the rock layer. Luo Nan was already unable to poke his head out. However, he simply didn't have the time to take a deep breath just now. After tumbling for a distance, his body was already filled with a deep chill. He had lost all feeling in his four limbs. What was even worse was that his chest couldn't help but feel stuffy. The consequences of not having stored oxygen had appeared. Luo Nan's mind was in a daze. He unconsciously opened his mouth and nose and cold water poured in. Ah woo woo loo loo. Even a man made of iron wouldn't be able to endure the cold water pouring down his nose. Luo Nan's hands and feet struggled a few times before his eyes went black. Then a dark red glow enveloped him. Only the center of the circle shone faintly. This was the standard state of near death. It took a while before Luo Nan recovered. At the corner of his field of vision, the jumping number reached 10. Guide Nina's gentle voice prompted, "The objective of this stage has been completed." The immersion helmet was powered off, and Luo Nan's consciousness withdrew from the reality interface. He felt the viscous nutrient fluid surge around him, and his soul strength, having lost its guidance, was in a similar situation. It was smashed back, but it was much more violent. Luo Nan silently recited the 16 words of, "My heart's a prison." He utilized the chanting breathing technique to maintain his mental state in a peaceful state. In the depths of his mind, the chains rang a few times. After continuously shaking his soul power, it finally stabilized. However, there were still waves of soul power seeping into the ground. It was like a small waterfall rushing down a short cliff, constantly pressuring him. "Very good. His condition is quite stable." Bai Xinyan's voice sounded, indicating that the treatment for the day had come to an end. "You can enter the visiting hours earlier." "That's nice, right?" These last words were clearly not meant for Luo Nan. The water level of the nutrient fluid continued to drop at this time. Luo Nan extended his hand and took off his helmet. The blood-red glow of the setting sun cut through the window and spread out on the outer walls of the treatment pod. The glow blended together with the turbid nutrient fluid. Everything he looked at was covered in a haze of light. Luckily, Luo Nan didn't use his eyes much right now. He naturally knew what changes were happening outside. He extended his hand and knocked on the inner wall of the cabin. He sent a message through the hex ear in his ear. "Good afternoon, Sister He. Isn't this Secretary He?" Bai Xinyan, who was looking through the surveillance records, said casually. No one paid any attention to her. He Yuan wore a neat and tidy professional suit. She stood outside the healing pod. Though Luo Nan might not be able to see her clearly, she still gave a slight bow out of habit. "Good afternoon, Mr. Luo." It would take some time for the nutrient fluid to be completely extracted. He Yuan used the hexier to ask about Luo Nan's specific situation. Luo Nan grunted and grunted in response. There were some words that he could not understand, and he was unable to explain them clearly. A week had passed since the incident at Frost River Reality. His original plan to return to school and study had died in the womb. His permission to leave the hospital had been revoked, and he was once again placed under 24-hour surveillance. Bai Xinyan was personally in charge of this. One could see just how negative the society's judgment of Luo Nan's body's condition was from the way they handled things. But Luo Nan really didn't think so? Unfortunately, he couldn't say it. Yuan also discovered that asking Luo Nan was actually useless. In the end, she still needed to find a professional. She looked at Bai Xinyan. Bai Xinyan casually tapped the flexible screen interface. The gain value hovers between -17 and -25. It's an acceptable range. As I said just now, it's relatively stable. The so-called gain value was also known as the effect value. It was a quantification of the degree of coordination between the body and soul in Bai Xinyan's laboratory. Generally speaking, it reflected the way, structure, and degree of mutual interference between the mental and material planes were good or bad. A positive value represented a positive gain and a positive effect. A negative value represented a negative effect. A zero value represented no gain and no decrease. Looking at this standard, the higher the gain value, the better. It was normal for a normal ability user to gain or lose 1 or 2 points under normal circumstances. It was more obvious when it went over 10 points. Luo Nan's gain value was negative, and it broke through 20 points. It was certainly a more serious type. But at this level, a normal person's state would be like an avalanche. He could still fluctuate up and down. He was indeed relatively stable. How stable is he? There aren't any particularly intense mood changes. As long as he doesn't do any intense exercise, he should have no problems living a normal life as a sickly invalid. Actually, there's no point in looking around. Moderate exercise, moderate rest, and maintaining a good mood are more important than anything else. I can't stop a beauty from rolling in the sheets, right? It's fine as long as you're happy. Luo Nan had just opened the healing pod when he heard this. He was speechless for a time. However, he had interacted with Bai Xinyan for a long time over the past few days. He had a better understanding of this person's temperament, and he gained a bit of immunity. He just pretended not to hear and lowered his head to find clothes to wear. He Yuan tilted her face slightly and stared at Bai Xinyan. Bai Xinyan smiled as usual. Luo Nan had been shuttling in and out of the healing pod for many days. He was used to exposing his chest, back, thighs and the like. The thickness of his skin had increased. He draped a patient's robe over his shoulders and called it a day. He knew his own situation. Right now, Luo Nan's curiosity was placed elsewhere. What's the situation like outside? The Order of Justice hasn't sent anyone over yet? He Yuan didn't answer. Instead, Bai Xinyan spoke slowly, "You don't even care about your own injuries. It looks like you're quite eager for things to blow up." At this point, Bai Xinyan simply overstepped her boundaries and gave Luo Nan a lesson. "Oh, student Luo Nan, you need to know that in the battle at Frost River reality, there's no meaning in fighting over things or how many people die. Right now, the only thing everyone is concerned about is that the martial monarch has become an extraordinary. Moreover, she's able to contend against the might of the holy artifact invited by the Order of Justice's Archibladum. This is more important than anything else." Extraordinary? Luo Nan recalled the final stage of the conflict. Two powerful forces leaped back and forth, fighting fiercely across space. Even though most of the area was on the mental plane, the power that occasionally leaped into the material plane still blasted the logic world into pieces. Only later did Luo Nan learn that the first to cut in and cover for Nwang was the Order of Justice's Archibladum, borrowing the power of the Scales of Truth. The one who cut in later was Zhang Yingying's boss, the legendary woman known as the Martial Monarch. It's impossible to overestimate the significance of an extraordinary, Bai Xinyan explained in depth. Bai Xinyan explained in depth, in any power in the world, extraordinaries are a symbol of strength and rules. In recent years, Ouyang Qin, the Martial Monarch, and Old Yu have formed an iron triangle, stabilizing the foundation of the society in Xia City. Right now, two of the three have become extraordinary. The society's influence in Xia City has skyrocketed. They will certainly fight for the right to speak. Quantum Corporation has done it in Luo City. That place has become a paradise for capital. In AI City, the Order of Justice has done it. That place is the kingdom of God on earth. But upon closer examination, one of them is a company that clearly pursues the greatest profit. The other is an order with a clear doctrine. What can the society bring out? Some sort of lifestyle. Perhaps they can borrow a shell and use it in another direction. Chapter 261. The general he that Bai Xinyan spoke of should be referring to He Yuan's father, the high-ranking officer of Xia City's coastal defense force, He Buozhen. Speaking of which, this person could be considered Cragburst's old superior. He was relatively low-key in the military and had a decent reputation. However, the most powerful member of the He family was He Yuan's grandfather, General He Chong. That man was one of the brightest generals of World War III, once serving as the highest commander of the Space Exploration Fleet directly under the Star Alliance Committee. He was a standard military big shot who had retired many years ago, but he had countless old acquaintances in the military and held a lofty position. He Buozhen had the shadow of his father, and his conduct was quite commendable. If he were to enter the political arena after he retired, there was indeed a lot of hope for him to become an administrative official of his hometown, Xia City. Of course, this involved a rather complicated layer of politics. The ability user society was already outside the scope of Luo Nan's understanding. He racked his brain to think, but he couldn't figure it out. Instead, his throat felt itchy and he started coughing again. From start to finish, He Yuan had no interest in such topics. It was as if the person Bai Xinyan was talking about was someone completely unrelated to her. Seeing Luo Nan cough, she brought a cup of water over to him. She smoothly and logically changed the topic back to Luo Nan. Mr. Luo's nervous system damage shouldn't be worsening right now, right? Bai Xinyan chuckled. Her gaze swept across Luo Nan's face. Frankly speaking, it's very hard for there to be a clear improvement. I've spent too much time right now to help him control the rate at which his soul strength grows. This has caused the medical progress to lag greatly. If this continues, then the amount of time we spend together day and night will increase. Student Luo Nan, are you sure you didn't do this on purpose? Luo Nan corrected him earnestly from the bottom of his heart. The Frost River waterway is where I spend all my time. Actually, there was no problem with Bai Xinyan's professional explanation. Luo Nan's biggest problem right now was the uncontrollable growth of his soul strength. The drawing of the life sketches, the understanding of the order framework, the sacrificial hunting of the wraith symbol, and so on had pushed his soul power to new heights time and time again. Luo Nan even discovered that as long as he released his mental senses, as long as he used clairvoyance and cognition, the growth of his soul strength would run through the entire process. It was like the autumn rain on a calm lake. Unknowingly, it had overflowed the bridge and overflowed the embankment. Naturally, it put more and more pressure on the body. In response, Bai Xinyan's treatment method was the Frost River path. This could be considered a sort of cage therapy. Luo Nan's soul strength was confined in this monotonous and repetitive environment of knowledge. He used one high-difficulty test after another to continuously consume his soul strength. This method could not solve the root of the problem, but it could still be used as an emergency measure. The problem was that there were 3 versions of the Frost River waterway. One was a simplified version that could only be used on ordinary people. One was the professional guide version that Bai Xinyan took out. It was suitable for metahumans to use and could be used for analysis and guidance. The last one was the deluxe complete version that Luo Nan had found using the external neuron. Of course, the professional guidance version wasn't bad either. But Luo Nan had experienced the complete version, which covered the archetype format's cultivation in elite mode. Returning to this emasculated version made Luo Nan feel like he was at a disadvantage. Also, Bai Xinyan would monitor every practice from the outside. It was hard for Luo Nan to dispel his vigilance against this female doctor who was clearly involved in the research of the archetype format. This week had been truly arduous for him. Taking advantage of the fact that He Yuan was here, Luo Nan expressed his wish once more. Maybe we can try adding body exercises. In the end, this is the problem of the imbalance between body and soul. Blindly consuming soul strength and not strengthening the fleshly body is like drawing a prison. That's a good word to use. Bai Xinyan pursed her lips into a smile. Her gaze roamed and she sized up Luo Nan once more. As a doctor, of course I want to do a radical cure. But I must emphasize that for any type of autonomous body exercise, increasing the quantity is an inevitable choice. With your current situation, it's best if you don't get your hopes up. Then wait for your laboratory to come and reform me? Luo Nan didn't say anything, but his heart was filled with unhappiness. Bai Xinyan's current treatment plan was to use special nanomaterials to cast Luo Nan's body from the outside to the inside. It was said that the basic method was to use special nanomaterials to cast the relevant neurons and internal organs. This would rapidly increase the endurance of the fleshly body while repairing the damage. In the past, Luo Nan wouldn't have been particularly opposed to this restoration plan. After all, Bai Xinyan's clay laboratory was a top-notch research organization for the restoration and strengthening of the nervous system. Her instructor was the person in charge of the laboratory, Dr. Clay. He was the leading authority on this project. But ever since the incident at Frost River Reality, Luonan became more and more wary of Bai Xinyan. He really didn't want to put his life on the line for this laboratory that might have an unclear relationship with Quantum Corporation. Especially with the growth of Luonan's soul strength, the transformation ratio in the plan grew larger and larger. It was no longer in the scope of simple nerve restoration. Even Octopus, who was in charge of contacting Dr. Clay, was a bit unsure. Luonan's thoughts weren't hidden deep enough. Bai Xinyan saw through him with a glance. It's not rare for a patient to reject a doctor's treatment plan. It's not uncommon for patients to prescribe their own medicine. But imagination isn't a scalpel. Even if it is, it will only stir up a mess here. Her slender fingers drew a circle near her temple. Clearly she was talking about a certain someone's brain damage. Luonan mumbled to himself, "What's the point of self-logic? Oh, student Luonan wants to discuss the principles of treatment for ability users?" In terms of professional knowledge, even 10 Luonans tied together were no match for Bai Xinyan. Naturally, Luonan wouldn't argue with her. He could only lower his head in silence. Yuan opened her mouth to speak. Before Dr. Clay arrived and confirmed the treatment plan, Mr. Luo's situation had always been variable. A week ago we probably wouldn't have imagined that things would turn out like this. Bai Xinyan raised her eyebrows. "That's true." Luonan gaped. He couldn't tell whether Yuan was helping him out of his predicament or if she was stabbing him in the back. Yuan didn't give him too much time to think. She spoke directly to him. "Mr. Luo, I'm very happy to see that your state has stabilized. So, according to the requirements of the Society's new member training, the Society has decided to arrange a series of general knowledge learning missions for you. The intensity and difficulty aren't high, but a certain degree of concentration is required. I hope you can prepare yourself." As she spoke, Yuan transmitted a study schedule through the hexayear. Luonan skimmed through it. It included knowledge learning, skill practice, mission practice, and so on. It seemed to conform to the norm, but why did the lectures all look so familiar? Yuan was at the top of the list. Her course was World Order in and out of the Psychic Wave Network. There was also Crag Burst's Universal Commands Crash Course, Bamboo Poles, Notes on the Most Important People in the World, and even Red Fox's Tracking and Anti-Tracking Practice, Paper Cuts, Soul Strength Activation Techniques, and so on. Chapter 262. Bai Xinyan asked him with a beaming smile, "Do you know them all?" This judgment was a bit amazing. Bai Xinyan definitely could not see the information on the Psychic Wave Network. How could she guess it? Bai Xinyan met Luonan's rare gaze of admiration and blinked. "It's easy to guess. It's easier to accept a troublemaker like you after interacting with you." "You must be joking. It's because you're already marked in the hearts of many people. The Society has no confidence in their methods of keeping secrets, so they created a relatively closed circle for you. Unfortunately, your ability to cause trouble is probably useless." Luonan had an embarrassed expression, but he was secretly alarmed. It was mainly because he heard the word "closed." He subconsciously flipped through his class schedule. Learning things was great, but he absolutely did not want to be sealed in a small circle. He had already spent 2 weeks in the hospital. He could endure the loneliness, but how could research and being researched be the same? Yuan seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Considering Mr. Luo's situation in school, the training time is mainly arranged at night. There's no conflict. Between the lines, it was a refutation of Bai Xinyan's closed-door attitude. Luonan gave him a wake-up call. Yeah, he had nearly forgotten about going to school. It was already the middle of October. He had actually devoted half of his high school time to the hospital. If this continued, it would be hard to avoid having to stay a year. He consulted Bai Xinyan. "With my situation, when can I go back to school and attend classes?" "As long as you can guarantee 10 practice sessions at Frost River Reality in the morning and in the evening, you can go back anytime." Bai Xinyan's reply was direct and efficient, but she still stabbed him in the back. "I thought you were playing dumb and not mentioning it." Luonan vowed not to talk to Bai Xinyan again tonight. Yuan looked at her watch. "If it's convenient for Mr. Luo, can we start right now?" "Up to you guys." "I'm fine with it." Luonan and Bai Xinyan hurried over together. They could not help but roll their eyes. "You guys do what you need to do." Bai Xinyan giggled as she packed up her equipment. After everything was in order, she waved her hand and bid them farewell. Even though Luo Nan was on guard against her in every possible way, he had no choice but to admit that she really did have the flavor of a woman. It could even be said to be pleasing to the eye. But who knew that in this moment of absent-mindedness, Bai Xinyan's slender and moist fingertips would gently wipe Luo Nan's cheek. Focus on class. Don't get distracted. Alright, it's best if you go take a bath first. Bai Xinyan twirled her fingers and walked out with a smile. Luo Nan grinned. His face was a bit hot, but it was more of a headache. Coincidentally, He Yuan's line of sight fell on him. Embarrassed, he blurted out, "I'm going to take a bath." As soon as the words left his mouth, he wanted to slap himself. He Yuan was as calm as ever. She said softly, "Your wariness is too obvious." Luo Nan was stunned for a moment. The more nervous you are, the more white salt wants to tease you. That's just how she is, a typical feline. This was the first time Luo Nan had seen He Yuan describe a person behind his back. But was this an admonishment or an endorsement? Everyone should have a secret that only they know. Mr. Luo's attitude is correct. It's just that there's still room for adjustment. I hope that this period of training will bring about a certain change. As she spoke, He Yuan raised her hand slightly, indicating for Luo Nan to do as he pleased. It looked like He Yuan was on guard against Bai Xinyan. Luo Nan let out a sigh of relief in his heart after obtaining her approval. He thought about the following classes and rushed into the bathroom. He took a combat bath and changed into his normal clothes. He obediently returned to listen to He Yuan's class after he was refreshed. Let's start with the application of the Hexier. He Yuan had promised to teach him the relevant knowledge of the Hexier and the psychic wave network 2 weeks ago. Before this, Luo Nan had only obtained some basic knowledge from Zhang Yingying. He could feel that He Yuan's class was far more complete and rigorous than Zhang Yingying's. Perhaps it was less interesting, but in a practical sense, it was much more effective than the so-called happy education. Luo Nan gained a clearer understanding of the 6 communication layers of the Hexier in a short amount of time. He also did some strengthening exercises on some of the functions frequently used by the members of the society. Of course, He Yuan's teaching goals were far from just this. It could be seen from the name of her class that it was an extremely macro topic. The Hexier and the psychic wave network were just a starting point. Of course, these things would only be revealed later. He Yuan's ability to grasp time was absolutely top-notch. The first class lasted approximately 40 minutes, ending just in time for family visitation. Luo Nan could see from the communication screen that today was quite lively. Shuelei had also arrived, aside from his aunt, Mrs. Luo Shuqing, who had to come and look after him every day. That's all for today. He Yuan nodded to Luo Nan and prepared to leave. Luo Nan hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth. "Sister He." He Yuan stood under the last ray of light from the setting sun. Her face was not too clear, but her usual ramrod straight heroic posture became more and more prominent. Luo Nan suddenly discovered that he was actually unable to imagine He Yuan's appearance outside of an official setting. But the words had already been spoken and it was hard to take them back. He could only brace himself and continue speaking. "Sister He, it just so happens that my aunt and Shuelei are both here. How about we go out for a meal?" These weren't polite words. Luo Nan had been mulling over this entire time. He wanted to develop a personal relationship with He Yuan? Of course he didn't mean it that way. He just wanted to become more familiar with her. It didn't matter if it was the society's arrangement or He Yuan's own judgment. She was a former Special Forces officer with an extraordinary family background. She was even more outstanding than He Yuan. She had always assumed the posture of a secretary in front of Luo Nan, serving him. This was absolutely not a normal situation. No matter how happy Luo Nan's mood was, the rational part of him needed to be vigilant at all times. Don't get carried away. It was precisely because of this feeling of unease in his heart that Luo Nan tried to understand He Yuan a bit more. At the very least, could they be friends? There will be a chance in the future. He Yuan gave a polite response that could be expected. Her face was calm and peaceful from beginning to end. It was impossible to tell whether she was happy or angry. She walked out of the ward under Luo Nan's attentive gaze. She just so happened to bump face to face with Luo Shuqing and Shuelei. Shuelei, who had been cautiously conversing with Luo Shuqing, immediately jumped in fright. He had a deep impression of this woman who killed in 10 steps. After the incident at Frost River Reality, he had specifically asked the gym master about her. The gym master's attitude was very strange. Though he didn't really understand, he felt a sense of reverence in his heart. He instinctively bowed. Secretary He. He didn't know how to address her properly. He saw Zhang Yingying and the others address her as such, so he blurted it out. Yuan didn't mind. She gave a slight nod and bowed towards Luo Shuqing. Ms. Luo. Luo Shuqing and He Yuan had met a few times during this week. Luo Shuqing only knew that He Yuan was a government employee of the police department. She was in charge of the investigation and evidence collection work at Frost River Reality. Luo Shuqing immediately greeted her with a smile. There was a bit of distance amidst the politeness. After all, no one wanted their child to be questioned so many times. It was as if the victim had turned into a suspect. Chapter 263. Shui Lei enjoyed VIP treatment on Luo Nan's side. The host was Mrs. Luo Shuqing. Last time at the Limestone Water Village pub, Luo Shuqing brought Shui Lei home. She had a good impression of this tall and strong boy with a gentle temperament. However, what caused his status to soar was the incident at Frost River Reality. That night, Luo Nan stayed in the conflict zone. He was practically the last to be evacuated, and he was hospitalized in a coma. There was no way to hide this matter. When Mrs. Luo Shuqing heard of this, she was furious. From Mo Chio to Mo Peng, anyone related to that night's gathering was given a torrent of abuse by her. Luo Nan was so scared that he had to pretend to be unconscious for a while. How to explain what happened that night became a big problem. In the end, Zhang Yingying came up with a plan. She used the Shui father and son to divert attention. She said that Luo Nan was frightened and that Shui Weiluan and Shui Lei worked together to save him. The father and son both received favors from Luo Nan. They were also half-insiders, so it was easy for them to make statements. Under the skillful hands of the copywriter, the reason was woven seamlessly. Luo Nan was given the image of an enthusiastic citizen who assisted the police, erasing the crime of leaving the group that night. Because of this, Mo Haihang and Luo Shuqing invited Shui Lei and his family to dinner. It was quite a coincidence. Shui Weiluan was the backbone of the special forces, and Mo Haihang was the technical expert of the SEA. They had cooperated twice in the field of crimes involving social authority. They were not strangers. The two families got along well, and the relationship between the two families rapidly warmed. However, Shui Lei was quite tired. When Luo Shuqing was around, it was hard to avoid the topic of that night. Shui Lei was afraid that he would slip up and waste all his previous efforts. In the end, he would stick his head together with Luo Nan, grunting and grunting. No one knew what they were saying. Luo Nan looked at Shui Lei's embarrassed appearance and laughed until he coughed. He could not stop coughing. Even the acupressure technique that Mr. Bai taught him was not very effective. This scene was normal for Luo Nan, but Luo Shuqing could not help but feel anxious when she saw it. It's been half a month. Why isn't he better? When will Dr. Klai get here? She stood up as she spoke, wanting to massage Luo Nan's back to ease his breathing. Shui Lei rushed to take the lead. Aunt Qing, let me. His large hand pressed onto Luo Nan's back, slowly using force to rub it. Luo Nan hissed. It wasn't pain, but a marvelous heat seeped into his back. It dispersed into his 5 viscera and 6 bowels. It was as if clouds were rising, filling his throat. It was like the nourishment of warm water. Luo Nan's coughing improved greatly for a time. At this moment, Luo Shuqing could not sit still. She remembered that she had yet to understand the treatment situation today, so she immediately said, Lazy, you and Nan can talk here. I'll go to Dr. Bai's place. Alright, Aunt Qing, you can go. I'll stay here to accompany Nanster. Don't worry. Shui Lei had been lying for almost a week, so his mouth had become much sweeter. Luo Shuqing smiled at the two of them and hurried out. After the elders left, Shui Lei was able to speak more easily. As he massaged her, he said worriedly, You can't keep coughing like this. The gym master once told me that breathing can inspect the internal organs, move the 100 meridians and take in the soul. Breathing can observe heaven and earth, understand yin and yang, and understand the secrets of the universe. Breathing is a key valve that connects the inside and the outside, controlling the body and mind. If your breathing isn't good, your entire body will scatter. Anything you do will be half the result with twice the effort. Shui Lei only said half of what he wanted to say, With your current extraordinary abilities, your breathing rhythm is like this. Just how bad is your body? Just how hard will it be to recover? Luo Nan was able to understand Xue Lei's meaning. He had no way to deal with the state of his body. He could only chuckle a few times. Xue Lei relayed the gym master's half-written, half-spoken words, and the image of a sage-like old gentleman immediately appeared in Luo Nan's mind. As Xue Lei spoke, a thought that he had had before suddenly jumped out. In your situation, learning how to breathe should be quite useful. At the very least, it can adjust the state of your body. Nanster, why don't you come to our gym? Our gym master doesn't need to talk about anything else, but this is his ability in teaching disciples. Xue Lei gave a thumbs up and extended it before Luo Nan's eyes. He even wiggled it a few times. Luo Nan didn't doubt this at all. To be able to open a gym, to be able to teach such an outstanding disciple as Xue Lei, to be able to teach such a disciple as Xue Lei, this old gentleman's ability was certainly worthy of trust. Luo Nan suddenly thought of something. They had known each other for so long, but he had never asked Xue Lei what the name of the Daoguan Xue Lei belonged to was. Luo Nan wanted to know how to address the gym master. Our gym is called Divine You. It's that, Divine You? You the great conquers the flood? Luo Nan spoke without thinking, but Xue Lei went, ah, from behind him. Xue Lei raised his hand and smacked Luo Nan's shoulder. Luo Nan nearly choked on his mucus and saliva. Xue Lei was still unaware of this. He just shouted, Nanster, you're freaking awesome. Ha! When I mention the name of my gym to people, those deaf and blind people keep saying it's some fish restaurant. It makes people want to knock their teeth out when they hear it. It's you, Nanster. You're able to recognize the name in an instant. It looked like Xue Lei had been disgusted by the fish restaurant during this period of time. Divine You, divine fish? It was indeed quite easy to forget. Luo Nan just acted as if he didn't know. He laughed. I made the connection from that cauldron. You collected the metal of the 9 shepherds and cast the 9 cauldrons. They all tasted and cooked gods, ghosts and gods. The ancient people constructed heaven and earth, society, and the overlapping format of the self. It still has a certain meaning to this day. These words were written in his grandfather's notebook. He had a deep impression of it. He casually read it out. It's just that the simple format of the ancient times is difficult to use today. Format? Overlapping? What kind of position was this? Xue Lei didn't quite understand what Luo Nan was saying. He felt more and more that this new friend of his was quite different from a normal person's train of thought. It was precisely because of this train of thought that Luo Nan was always targeted and doubted. However, the facts proved that those baffling ideas were useful and very useful. That night he was by Luo Nan's side. He watched as this friend of his was doubted, conflicted, and turned in a series of twists and turns. It was a roller coaster ride, and Luo Nan's previous impression of Luo Nan was completely washed away. But the feeling of congeniality didn't decrease. Instead, it continued to increase. Speaking of which, the gym master always spoke half-intelligible words all day long. With this kind of temperament, Luo Nan and the gym master would probably have a lot to talk about. The two of them should get along even more. Xue Lei looked at Luo Nan once more with this thought, and his eyes lit up. He immediately did his utmost to promote Luo Nan. Our gym master's surname is Xiao. His name is the word Daoguan. He founded the Daoguan single-handedly. His reputation has always been excellent. If it weren't for the fact that the gym master likes to be quiet and doesn't do much management, the Daoguan would have become famous long ago. Xiao Xinyu? This name sounded quite like a classical wuxia. It complemented the identity of the gym master of the Daoguan. Chapter 264. Luo Nan could feel that his aunt was already a bit frightened after being hospitalized for 2 weeks. Her care for him would certainly increase to a higher level. Unfortunately, he had joined the society and caused a lot of trouble. He also had to deal with his upcoming study plan. He needed a lot of free time. Being locked up at home like a prisoner bird was absolutely out of the question. Then there needed to be a reasonable reason. Xue Lei's proposal was excellent. Divine Yu Gym was in the River Wu district. Training in martial arts would certainly take time. He might even need to attend morning classes. If he could make this happen, no matter how much his aunt worried about him, she wouldn't let him make a round trip to and fro every day. Wouldn't that apartment in Blue Bay come in handy? Of course, he needed the help of other people to accomplish this. Just Xue Lei alone might not be able to do it. Who should he ask for help? Actually, Luo Nan didn't have a choice. He lowered his head to touch his wristband and found Bai Xinyan's contact information. He was about to make the call when he suddenly remembered that his aunt had already paid a visit. Wouldn't it be awkward if he made a phone call to get a confession? Luo Nan's mind stirred. He excused himself to go to the restroom and walked a few steps. The Star River scene was already reflected in his mind. Luo Nan intentionally controlled the range of his mental senses. The physical radius of his mental senses only covered a few nearby floors, but it was still several hundred life sketches stitched together. The interlacing starlight of the nebula revealed information on many levels. All Luo Nan needed to do was to extract the parts he was interested in, increase the precision of his senses, and perform clairvoyance. This sort of godlike perspective gave people an incomparable feeling. However, before Luo Nan could lock onto Bai Xinyan, he discovered another person. Strange. He Yuan actually didn't leave. He Yuan walked inside the building of Renai Hospital. She was heading in the direction of Bai Xinyan's temporary office. Bai Xinyan was a doctor of medicine from Clay's laboratory, a world-class expert in nerve repair. Although Renai Hospital only had Luo Nan as a patient, she received very high treatment. She had a large office that was like a luxurious suite. She could take a nap here during the night. There was nothing to nitpick about other than the fact that it was a bit far from Luo Nan's ward. He Yuan didn't greet her. She just pushed open the door and entered. Inside the room, Bai Xinyan had already taken off her white lab coat. She was wearing a snow-white high-collared cashmere sweater. The inflating effect of the color didn't make her look bloated. Instead, it accentuated her slender figure, revealing her curves. It was a sight to behold. Right now, there was a rather handsome male doctor who refused to stay in the name of an academic exchange. Even if he had nothing to say, he had to find something to say. He just wanted to stay until it was time to get off work so that he could treat this cool and hot female doctor to dinner. Bai Xinyan, on the other hand, was quite patient. She picked up a cup of coffee and chatted with him with a smile. She was not impatient at all. He Yuan directly pushed open the door and entered, startling the already infatuated male doctor. He was about to lose his temper, but when he turned his head, he saw a pair of cold and clear eyes. He felt an inexplicable chill in his heart and instinctively became timid. "Professor Bai, your friend?" Bai Xinyan smiled and nodded. At the same time, she raised the cup in her hand. Her meaning was clear. The male doctor had wanted to introduce himself and get to know another beautiful woman, but when he saw this, he couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. He didn't have the courage to do so, so he shrunk his head and left. Bai Xinyan sipped a mouthful of hot coffee. She had no intention of politely entertaining him. In any case, she would just be asking for a snub. He Yuan directly walked forward and stood face to face with Bai Xinyan. In terms of height, she was a bit shorter than Bai Xinyan. However, her cold and serious aura made her seem a bit more powerful. "Across the ocean, I didn't invite you over from Luoyang City to do some kind of happy therapy." Bai Xinyan had a free and easy demeanor. She moved her cup away and said innocently, "Do you want me to drill your boss until he cries every day? Is that what you want?" "White Salt, I understand you. You've once told me yourself that as long as it's a pleasure therapy, it's only for the dead. In Luoyang City you treated me like this." Bai Xinyan couldn't help but laugh. She reached out to touch He Yuan's cheek. "But you're alive and well and you're so beautiful." He Yuan waved away Bai Xinyan's extended hand. Her expression was tranquil. "You know my condition better than I do." "All right, Miss TX. Oh, a nun is a bit more intimate. What I want to tell you is that doctors have the right to make plans, but any plan must be built on the foundation of the patient's own situation. Whether it's happy therapy or active intervention, there will always be a plan based on the condition of the patient. This is objective reality and nothing else." Bai Xinyan swirled her coffee cup, letting the black liquid sway along the edge of the cup. Not even a speck of it spilled out. "From what I've observed, your boss is currently paired with a happy therapy. This is the best choice. As for whether or not variables will appear in the time to come, I'm looking forward to it. Are you satisfied with this answer? It's already at the level of an incurable disease." Luo Nan could clearly sense the confrontation between the two beauties from beginning to end. But he wasn't like the cliché TV dramas, where the heavens fell and the earth cracked, where life was no longer interesting. Luo Nan just shrugged his shoulders in the bathroom. He sighed with emotion. It seemed that the external neuron had done something again. This marvelous little thing could bear the heavy pressure of soul strength, and it could achieve perfect self-concealment. It had evaded the probing of Ouyang Qin by Xinyan, and the others one after another, resulting in misjudgments. It made him seem overly naive and optimistic. Actually, it wasn't that Luo Nan didn't know the severity of the situation. On the contrary, his judgment of the degree of imbalance between body and soul was more pessimistic than anyone else. It was just that he was able to hold on by relying on the marvelous usage of the external neuron. Bai Xinyan's judgment didn't scare him. Instead, He Yuan's concern hidden beneath her calm attitude moved him quite a bit. Luo Nan sensed that his aunt was about to arrive at Bai Xinyan's office at this time. He couldn't delay any longer. He hurriedly gave Bai Xinyan a call. Bai Xinyan, who was in confrontation, was slightly startled. She laughed and flashed her wristband at He Yuan. She immediately connected the call. "Student Luo Nan, are you feeling unwell anywhere?" "Dr. Bai, there's something I want to ask you." "What is it?" "It's the tolerance of my body right now. Are you peeping?" "The range of your mental senses should be able to cover this area. If you keep going around and around like this, I can only assume that you have a guilty conscience." Bai Xinyan's gaze circled around the air. It was as if she could really see through Luo Nan. Luo Nan knew that he hadn't been discovered, but he still jumped in fright. In the end, he didn't cut off his clairvoyance. He mentally prepared himself and treated this as some sort of special videophone. He took a deep breath and spoke. "I want to ask Dr. Bai to give me a permit for normal physical training." "Oh, I just said that you can't increase your strength." "No, I just want to learn breathing techniques to relieve coughs." This concept probably exceeded Bai Xinyan's expectations. She clearly muttered to herself for a moment before saying, "Where to? The gym?" "Oh no. Leister recommended it. It's the gym he cultivates in." "Leister? Shuele?" Bai Xinyan muttered to herself once more after confirming the reason. He Yuan nodded at her at this time, indicating that she agreed. Luo Nan saw it and Bai Xinyan certainly saw it as well. However, she didn't follow He Yuan's script. Instead, she revealed a mysterious smile. "What's the name of the gym?" Divine You Gym." Chapter 265. There was something wrong with this atmosphere. Luo Nan began to regret making this call. No. He had made the right call. He had a cat-like curiosity in his heart. But in the end, He Yuan and Bai Xinyan didn't say much. Bai Xinyan used a very normal tone to reply, "Since it's that Shuele, you can give it a try. He should be from a traditional martial arts school. He's an expert in this area. But you need to pay attention. You're only suited for breathing, Daoyin, Tai Chi, yoga, and other gentle and soothing exercises. If the school doesn't mind, we'll need to keep a file for research. If these conditions are met, I can give you a prescription." Luo Nan had no reason not to agree. His call came at just the right time. His aunt just happened to be outside the door. Luo Nan immediately hung up the call. At nearly the same time, there was a knock on the door. The two ladies with extraordinary bearings glanced at each other once more. Bai Xinyan surveyed the nothingness of the room. She snorted faintly, causing Luo Nan to curse in his mind. His timing was far too accurate. It seemed that he had been suspected. But what happened next concerned his lifestyle for a period of time. Even if he had to be thick-skinned, he had to see it to the end. In any case, with his mental senses, those two wouldn't be able to get anything on him, right? Mrs. Luo Shuqing entered the room and saw He Yuan, the investigator. She was a bit surprised for a time and became even more vigilant. At this stage, she absolutely didn't want her nephew to enter the line of sight of the police. Even though she knew that the problem wasn't big, she wasn't willing to take any risks. He Yuan was very clear about the situation, so she didn't say anything more. She called out to Luo Shuqing, brushed past her shoulder and pushed the door open. Next was Bai Xinyan's time to shine. Perhaps it was because she was a supervisor, but Bai Xinyan handled matters very straightforwardly. She relied on her excellent professional knowledge and her silver tongue to temporarily dispel Mrs. Luo Shuqing's suspicions in a few short minutes. She even gave a positive hint. Reasonable and moderate exercise is good for your nephew's recovery. Luo Nan, who had been spying this entire time, naturally understood what she meant. He let out a long sigh of relief. He took into consideration that Shuele was still waiting outside, so he didn't continue spying. He withdrew his mental senses. Bai Xinyan sent off Aunt Luo Nan. Today's work was over. She didn't want to stay in this depressing building with endless illnesses. She quickly packed up, put on a windbreaker out of habit and left after work. She took the elevator to the parking lot and was wondering if she should contact Zhang Yinying to go to a nightclub together. Suddenly, she felt something and stopped in her tracks, turning her head to look. What greeted him was a cold stare, as dense as the north wind. Even the interior of the building, which had a constant temperature all year round, seemed to have dropped to the freezing point. He Yuan, Knew that this person wouldn't let her off so easily. Bai Xinyan immediately raised her hands in surrender. Stop glaring at me, my dear. I'm not trying to pry into your privacy. Your source of information. Hey, this is an open secret, okay? Open? Everything related to Luo Nan, the Luo family, and formatting theory? Bai Xinyan was speechless for a moment. This old friend of hers had obviously chosen the wrong line on purpose. Moreover, it seemed like she really did not care about her own private affairs at all. She pointed directly to the more sensitive areas without any disguise. He Yuan was overbearing. To a certain extent, your instructor's laboratory works for Quantum Corporation. It involves the theory of the modification and evolution of the nervous system, and it has the same origin as the archetype format. The formatting theory of the Luo family should have been the goal you all strive to obtain. But why have you never had any thoughts of obtaining it all these years? Or perhaps you originally coveted it, but you discovered a flaw that was difficult to overcome, just like what Mr. Luo is displaying right now? Are you flaunting your reasoning ability? Bai Xinyan shook her windbreaker and covered her collar. She wanted to shield herself from the cold air that assaulted her face, but she couldn't help but sigh. Or are you saying that you think that it would be better for him, and for the current situation in Xia City, if we let that little, voyeur reserve duty kid overturn everything here? He Yuan stared at Bai Xinyan. A moment later, she walked expressionlessly toward the sports car that Bai Xinyan had just purchased a few days ago. She directly opened the door and sat inside. Bai Xinyan shrugged her shoulders. She got in the car and started it up. Then she did a beautiful drift in the narrow space and sped toward the exit. Soon she merged into the city's surging traffic. After leaving Rinai Hospital several kilometers away, He Yuan spoke once more. Give me the relevant information. Everything. I don't have it. Bai Xinyan's reply was straightforward and to the point. The research related to formatting theory ended very quickly. The conclusion the higher-ups came to was that there was no value in continuing the research. I can tell you the reason. After over 1,000 repeated experiments, it was determined that no one could withstand the rapid expansion of soul strength. It seems that you only have a smattering of knowledge regarding formatting theory. Then can I give you an introduction? Do you need it? He Yuan's eyelids drooped slightly. She didn't say a word. Then don't blame me for talking too much. Bai Xinyan set the sports car to autopilot mode. She hugged the back of her head with both hands and adopted a lazy posture. According to Quantum Corporation's research, the formatting theory you speak of is confirmed to be a completely uncontrollable method of soul strength growth. The source is Luo Yuandao, who is also your boss grandfather. He obtained a sort of revelation in the wilderness. It was like the gods of various secret orders. Although it was marvelous, it wasn't unique in that era. However, it was different from those so-called gods, who babbled on and on. Over the next few decades, that old man always wanted to use his own method to reinterpret this power, and he achieved a series of results. There were two main paths involved. One was closer to the revelation itself. It emphasized the difference between individuals, and it was formatting theory. The other was the path of fundamentalism that became narrower and narrower. Compromises were made, incorporating modern technological capabilities, reducing individual characteristics, and searching for the greatest common divisor. This was the theory of the archetype format. He Yuan listened quietly, not saying a word. You're very clear about the results. Formatting theory and the archetype format. Let's not talk about which is more impressive. In practical applications, formatting theory is without a doubt a crushing defeat. Of all the practitioners and experimental subjects who accepted this theory, the vast majority of them died. They all died from the uncontrolled growth of their soul strength. His grandfather Luo Yuandao is now a madman. His father Luo Zhongheng, oh, he's dead now. This person worked with Yen Hong for a period of time. According to what Yen Hong said, that person was simply a barrel of gunpowder that could explode at any time. That's not a description. It's the kind in the real sense. That's why not even his bones were left. Bai Xinyan was still supporting the back of her head, but her eyes were looking towards He Yuan to see her reaction. He Yuan also looked over. What's the conclusion? Isn't it just like that? Bai Xinyan's bright eyes blinked innocently. Chapter 266. In the eyes of capitalists, everything in the world could be squeezed out of profit. Even though Luo Nan appeared inexperienced and clumsy during the operation at Frost River Reality, even a fool could see the superplasticity of his abilities. For a large financial group like Quantum Corporation, Even if they did not make a long-term investment, they could take out a few similar tools with short-term explosive power. These tools would be able to display unimaginable effects at critical moments. Unfortunately, Quantum Corporation had never paid any attention to Luo Nan. If not for Yin Yongguo's arrival, if not for Zhang Yinying's discerning eyes, Luo Nan would have been forever buried in the boundless sea of people until he turned into a barrel of gunpowder, exploding with a bang. He Yuan absolutely did not believe that there was nothing fishy going on here. Then, in the end, what made Quantum Corporation give up on excavating this wealth? Bai Xinyan removed her hands from behind her head and stretched her waist. I'm just a researcher in a laboratory. What deep information could I possibly know? This is all I know. It's up to you to believe it or not. She displayed this attitude because she was certain that He Yuan could not do anything to her right now. The transmission and exchange of information depended on her mood. She was willing to say this because she wanted to see He Yuan's reaction. It would be a pleasant surprise if juice could be squeezed out from a sugar cane that had already been squeezed once. He Yuan did not force her any further. She just sank into deep thought. The only thing that could make such an insatiable and greedy capital stop was either a terrifying and irresistible threat, or an incomparably enormous profit that could be enticed and harvested, or both. Following this direction, He Yuan rearranged the information related to Quantum Corporation and formatting theory over the past few years. She tried to find clues, but it was hard to obtain an answer in a short amount of time. At this time, Bai Xinyan stared at her with a beaming smile. I've spent so much time talking to you. Shouldn't you answer my question? He Yuan did not even raise her eyelids. She completely ignored her, but she did not directly refuse. Seeing this, Bai Xinyan bluntly said, although Ouyang Qin stole the limelight in the matter of Frost River reality, I feel that what's more interesting is the deep involvement of the government and the military. Ability users are controlled in the cage of the logic world. The all-encompassing social consciousness, the unified political structure, the balanced intervention of the inner and outer worlds, and even the final fusion. It seems that this is the embodiment of someone's authoritarian governance theory? This series of questions actually pushed Luo Nan's ward a step further with regards to the question of whether or not He Yuan's father would participate in the election. It reflected a high degree of concern towards the political situation of Xia City. It was extremely straightforward. Towards these questions, He Yuan still remained silent. However, as long as she didn't refute him outright, Bai Xinyan had a pretty good idea of what was going on. She wanted to make some comments on this matter, but at this moment He Yuan's brows visibly furrowed. Soon after, Bai Xinyan also received the information through special channels. She fiddled with her wristband, letting the short text and information repeatedly appear in her eyes. It was just like the content of the wristband. It really is a consistent way of doing things. Just 10 minutes ago, across the ocean in Bay City, a heart illumination First Ablatum of the Order of Justice had publicly killed the vice president of the Bay City branch of the Ability User Society due to a disagreement. This led to an intense conflict between the Order of Justice and the society. Similar incidents will probably happen one after another in the coming days. Bai Xinyan revealed a strange smile. Even if it won't be this serious, the tone has already been set. In a few days, every branch will be in a state of emergency. Naturally, headquarters will be hard-pressed. They will certainly make some moves. Your troubles have never been outside of the society. He Yuan simply knocked on the car window in response to Bai Xinyan's comment. Stop the car. I'll take you. It'll save time. There's no need. He Yuan pushed open the door and got off the car at a temporary stop. After standing still, she cast her gaze toward the building of Renai Hospital, which had been left behind to the point where she couldn't even see a trace. Over there, Luo Nan was still working hard for a more comfortable lifestyle. For a 15 or 16-year-old kid, there was nothing wrong with this. However, how long could this kind of peaceful and tranquil life last? Luo Nan didn't know that He Yuan was worried several kilometers away. Right now, his plan for freedom was progressing smoothly. With Bai Xinyan's cooperation, Xuelei used his own body to persuade his aunt. It was a reasonable matter. By the time visiting hours ended and Xuelei and his aunt left together, Luo Nan's trip to the Daoguan for practice was basically set. Luo Nan let out a long breath. His mind relaxed and a deviation inevitably appeared. Because he was on guard against Bai Xinyan, and because he was a bit careful, Luo Nan never thought about telling others the secret of his external neuron. But he never expected that his concealment would actually cause He Yuan, Bai Xinyan, and even more people to make an extremely pessimistic judgment. He Yuan's attitude made him feel even more embarrassed. For a moment he almost wanted to confess this secret. But at this time he recalled the words that Yuan had said not too long ago. Everyone should have a secret. Only they know. He still didn't completely understand the deeper meaning of her words. But judging from his reasoning, this was more trustworthy than the impulsiveness of his emotions. In the dead of night, no one would come to disturb him at this time. Luo Nan took a deep breath, contending with the choking cough that floated up once more. His mind was restrained, sinking into the depths of his brain. A bolt of lightning was roaming within the bright and dark region of his internal vision. This was the external neuron, the dynamo core that Jack and the others spoke of. Under the interaction of the mental plane and the material plane, a peculiar representation appeared. When his senses went a step deeper, a certain marvelous feeling of reality came back. There really was an enormous and tangible medium. It was like an enormous hole, like the void, and it appeared within. The vast majority of the endlessly rising soul strength was drawn inside, separated by a layer. It was this buffer that allowed the surging torrent to turn into a vast and deep lake, avoiding a direct impact. This was the most life-saving function of the external neuron. Luo Nan called this function the hollow depository. It was by relying on this that he was able to endure the pressure of the rapidly rising soul strength to this day. But another week passed. No matter how much Bai Xinyan's cage therapy increased the consumption, this method of treating the symptoms was unable to restrain the steady and solid growth momentum of the soul strength. Even if it was the void hiding, it would not be able to hide it. More and more soul strength overflowed from within, forming a pressing and squeezing force against Luo Nan's fleshly body. Whether it was Bai Xinyan or He Yuan, these people's pessimistic judgments of Luo Nan's unbalanced state of body and soul originated from this. However, Luo Nan himself had a different feeling about this. The uncontrollable growth of soul strength was like a flood that overflowed in all directions. It was hard to control. But after filling the void of the deep hole, the rapid growth turned into a slow growth. From formless to tangible. Was this not a form of control? Could it be that it was impossible to take a step further? Chapter 267. The operation interface of the external neuron opened before Luo Nan's eyes. There were no other changes except for the icon of the visualization diagram. The gray and long download and install status showed some obvious changes. There was an additional ray of light above it, forming a long and narrow fan-shaped region of light. The ratio was about 1/10. It was much clearer than before. Luo Nan could sense that the specific ratio was a very mysterious number. This phenomenon appeared after the incident at Frost River Reality. The analysis progress was 7% before. It had jumped by nearly 3% overnight. The progress was quite fast. But what the hell was 2 decimal places? Luo Nan suspected that if he sought a higher precision, it would go all the way down to 9. There was a plateau in the progress of analysis? There was a level restriction? This was an unprecedented situation. Luo Nan had to seriously ponder over it. From Luo Nan's perspective, the application icon on the operation interface was a mapping of the external neuron's analytical control ability to a certain target. This point was fully reflected in Gear and the human-faced arachnid. The current visualization diagram icon appeared from analyzing and controlling the human-faced arachnid. But as Luo Nan's understanding deepened, especially from the new understanding he gained that night at Frost River Reality, he realized that the essence of the human-faced arachnid was chaos and chaos. What was there to analyze? He would not be able to obtain any answers even if he wanted to analyze it. What could truly be analyzed and what possessed the value of analysis was the order frame that formed the outstanding instinct of the essence of chaos. So Luo Nan saw that the image of the human-faced arachnid did not appear on the operation interface. Instead, it was a visualization diagram, a combination of a tetrahedron, an inscribed sphere, and an outer scribed sphere. Alright. Why was it this? Every time Luo Nan thought of this question, his heart would thump loudly. This thump lasted for an entire week. The corresponding relationship between the human-faced arachnid and the order frame complemented the crucial logical link of the operation interface's display and analysis target misalignment. Next, he just needed to use the simplest of reasoning to arrive at an inference. Among them, the visualization diagram overlapped with the order frame to a large extent. Could the overlap of the two be reflected in a practical sense? Every time a corresponding thought surfaced, the resonant resonance of the heavily chained crow in the depths of the boundless mental plane from that night in the logic world seemed to reappear in his ears. Between the various phenomena, between each detail, there seemed to be a thread that connected vaguely. Some were bright, some were dark, some were hidden, and some were visible. all the way until it formed a closed loop that caused Luonan's heartstrings to tremble. Unfortunately, there were quite a few details that were blurry and unclear. Luonan's understanding of the order frame, the visualization diagram, and the human-faced arachnid didn't bring about any breakthrough progress. The analysis progress was still at the weird value of 99%, and the rapid expansion of his soul power was still reaching the limit of the void depository. The imbalance of his body and soul was still worsening. However, Luonan had gained something in the end. First of all, he received a bright future. If the overlap between the visualization diagram and the order frame was a reality, then the path ahead of him would be unimaginably deep and vast. It represented the astonishing breadth and depth of formatting theory. Secondly, on a more substantial level, the originally illusory order framework and mysterious and incomprehensible visualization diagrams now had a substantial carrier, the external neuron. This marvelous creation was crowned with the name of the dynamo core. It gave the order frame a precise numerical classification down to 2 decimal places. The creator of the external neuron undoubtedly had a deep and thorough understanding of the corresponding elements. The external neuron was able to successfully seal the order frame and analytical design within it, forming a grand work of art. The existence of this work of art was a cognitive platform for the order frame. It materialized a large amount of untouchable and incomprehensible elements. Although Luonan's current understanding of the external neuron was extremely shallow, this toy itself possessed rich interfaces and universality. It was able to seamlessly connect to the human nervous system, artificial intelligence systems, and even the format pyramid's social format. This provided Luonan with a large number of entry points. For example, right now Luonan was extremely interested in the function of the void depository. This function had great value in terms of control over soul power. It possessed an urgent and substantial significance. Luonan had to admit that if he didn't have the external neuron, he probably wouldn't even need to use Xinyan's happiness therapy. It would have been a huge tragedy. Formatting theory was good in every way, but how in the world did it grow out of control? When his grandfather first created and researched this theory, how did he evade and resolve it in the end? Luonan recalled the records in his grandfather's notebook. In the end, he could only unwillingly admit that the answer probably didn't exist in the early research results. It looked like the search for the other notebooks had to be put on the agenda. Luonan thought of contacting Bro Octopus, who was researching the formulas in his grandfather's notebook. He could also ask him about his grandfather's physical and mental state recently. Luonan's thoughts suddenly froze when he found Bro Octopus's profile picture in his contact list. Mental state? A link that he had intentionally or unintentionally overlooked suddenly jumped into Luonan's train of thought. At this moment, a demonic voice floated back and forth within his heart. A schizophrenic lunatic, what was it made of? Was it because his research results were stolen? Was it because his father and son were betrayed? This had always been the reason Luonan believed in. But what if he looked at it from a different angle? From a perspective that he couldn't have imagined before, but right now, it was truly placed before his eyes? How could a creator not be a practitioner? How could the results of formatting theory not be used on his own body? Then if, and only if, this theory was ultimately unable to resolve the problem of the uncontrollable growth of soul strength. It was unable to resolve the problem of the imbalance between body and soul. It was not a perfect theory. Luonan used an objective attitude to make a hypothesis. Then what would his grandfather's state be like? It must be known that there was a 99% chance that there was not a single external neuron in his grandfather's body. What would be the result? This thought made Luonan's back suddenly explode with a layer of cold sweat. And at this moment, Luonan recalled his grandfather's crazy words back at the medical center. With his current understanding, it seemed that there was an extremely marvelous sense of correspondence when he analyzed and interpreted it anew. When this angle of thought became clear, his thoughts were like a flood that had opened the floodgates. They rumbled and surged forward, unable to be restrained. His grandfather's situation was set aside for now, but there was still that person. That person who had delivered the external neuron into Luonan's hands in an inexplicable manner. That person who could not be bypassed, who could not be cut apart. His methods, his objectives, his considerations, what would they be like? Chapter 268. Fire. Fire. Let the flames burn. Burn through this cloak of darkness. Cloak? Darkness. Luonan suddenly opened his eyes. He still wasn't quite used to the light here. He felt that the wall lamp was like a flame on the verge of being extinguished. It swayed restlessly under the cover of the darkness cloak. It was precisely the darkness cloak that pressed down on his body, isolating him from the outside world. It was like the sequela of a lack of oxygen. His entire body felt sluggish, unable to muster any energy. He understood that this feeling wasn't right. He put his feet down from the pedestal and his fingers tapped the ring-shaped chair on his body. The smart wall lamp's brightness began to increase, and warm rays of light sprinkled down. The unbalanced state of light and darkness twisted. The exquisite veins of the tree walls, the bookshelves, the wall decorations and the shadows they cast. They formed a picture together with the extended staircase. This caused this narrow space of less than 3 square meters to stretch out and possess a marvelous sense of layering. Luonan felt much better. Right now he was in the treehouse of Withered Tree Sandbar. This was the private area that his parents had single-handedly built. This was the first time he had come to school after 2 weeks. The design of the day shift curriculum, the narrow social circle, and of course the sick leave that Xie Junping had arranged for him. It was destined that the vast majority of people wouldn't know that such a student had quietly disappeared and quietly returned. After the end of the day's classes, Luonan arrived at Gear as the only official member of the ritual club. He arrived at the treehouse that was still unknown to everyone and quietly rested. Time had washed away his mother's aura in this place, but there were countless minute traces that manifested her past existence. Luonan had deliberately searched for her at first, but he felt that there was no need to do so after a moment. He just sat in the resting room on the lower level, leaning against the slightly bumpy decorations on the tree wall. He stared blankly. Countless things tangled in his mind, but none of them had any meaning. This continued until he fell into a deep sleep, when he was roused awake by the crazy ramblings of his grandfather in his memories. He had been tormented by those crazy ramblings for the past 2 days. He always wanted to analyze a hidden line of logic from them, but this kind of whimsical thinking was destined to hurt his nose. Even his brain was a bit numb. He looked at his wristband. Nearly 2 hours had passed in his days. It was also at this moment that the sound of a ladder was heard. It was a convenient tool that had just been installed at the end of the underwater corridor. It was used to enter and exit normally, and it was one of the results of Xie Junping's work over the past half a month. Not long after, Xie Junping, who had been in a meeting for half the afternoon, walked in. With one more person in the lounge, it immediately became especially crowded. He simply sat on the steps, yawning and crying, and asked casually, "What's wrong with you? Have you seen the video?" No. Only now did Luonan remember that Xie Junping had sent him a video. Xie Junping said that he had found the culprit who had snuck into the treehouse. However, it was a little different from what he had expected. "You said it was a magical mouse?" "It's a muskrat, not a rat." Xie Junping gnashed his teeth as he corrected Luonan's misconceptions. It could be said that the brown-skinned mouse that he had fought with for nearly half a month was engraved in his heart. That thing is definitely not ordinary. It's impossible for a normal rodent to have that kind of reaction and behavior pattern. It must have mutated after eating some waste from some laboratory. Luonan was able to feel Xie Junping's emotions. Xie Junping's attention wasn't just on the body of a rodent. Today Luonan arrived at Gear with a completely new appearance, shocking Luonan. He could roughly imagine how much effort Xie Junping had put into planning for the past 2 weeks. Xie Junping was the first person to treat Luonan like this, aside from his own family. Luonan had no intention of placing the reason within the framework of the format pyramid. He wasn't willing to speak dry words of thanks. He just silently remembered this favor and grinned. "I'll look at it later. I'll wait until I catch that mouse. A muskrat. Steam, braise or stir-fry it up to you." Xie Junping couldn't help imagining the beautiful scene of the brown-skinned mouse being tossed into a pot of oil. However, he soon sobered up and asked Luonan, "Aren't we going to that Daoguan? When are we leaving?" "It's about time. Right now." Luonan had already obtained his aunt's permission to learn breathing techniques, but it couldn't be said to have been finalized yet. According to what Shuelei said, Gym Master Xiu would rather have nothing than a substandard disciple when it came to accepting disciples. Luonan had to make a trip and meet with him before he could make a final decision. According to Shuelei, Gym Master Xiu's original words were, "Whether or not he can be taught, whether or not he can be taught, we'll talk when we meet." For this reason, Luonan and Shuelei arranged a time to meet at the Divine Yu Gym. Xie Junping volunteered to be Luo Nan's driver after hearing about this matter. Luo Nan wasn't at school for over half a month, but Xie Junping and Shui Lei's friendship didn't break. Shui Lei's problems with his society had come to a standstill after the incident at the Limestone Water Village pub. Xie Junping was the one who helped resolve it. Shui Lei's monstrous body and super strong martial strength made him an object of envy for Xie Junping. He yearned for the Daoguan that Shui Lei spoke of, which had an amazing teacher. The sky was already dark by the time they emerged from the dense forest on the north bank. Xie Junping was still driving the electric sightseeing car, speeding through the campus with Luo Nan. There were very few people on campus at this time. Most people had already returned home. Xie Junping increased the speed of the sightseeing car to the highest speed allowed. At the same time, he spoke eloquently about the battle between him and the brown-skinned mouse. Luo Nan suddenly spoke without any warning as he controlled the submarine to pursue the mouse. Slow down. Xie Junping instinctively hit the brakes when they arrived at an intersection. Thanks to this, a dark green heavy container that was incompatible with the atmosphere of the campus rumbled past on another road. The sealed container brushed past the front of the sightseeing car, bringing with it a strong gust of wind that blew the fallen leaves and caused the windshield to ring. F***ck me. Xie Junping had always been the one putting on airs on campus. When had he ever seen someone act unreasonably in front of him? Plus, what the hell was this heavy container? Acumen College implemented a strict system that prohibited external vehicles from entering. Even if there were all sorts of second-generation and government officials on campus, they would at most use a sightseeing car as a means of transportation. There were also special passageways for construction and transport vehicles. How could they just barge through the campus? The heavy container didn't stop. It sped all the way and soon entered a special underground passageway. But the situation just now was certainly a serious violation of the rules. As a candidate for vice president of the student council and a high-ranking member of the honor society, Xie Junping laughed mischievously. He called the campus security office as if it was a matter of course. He sent over the license plate, model number, and the image captured by the photon film. I guarantee that it won't leave the school gates. Xie Junping winked at Luo Nan. Of course, this little matter didn't count as anything. Soon he and Luo Nan forgot about this matter. They rode the sightseeing car to the parking lot and switched to the phantom flying car. They sped all the way to the magnetic track and locked onto the coordinates of the River Wu district. They hadn't run far when a call came in. Xie Junping swept a glance and used the car phone to connect. He chuckled and said, "Old Du, what's up? You're free from worry?" Chapter 269. What the hell? Xie Junping was baffled. Old Du, you must have taken too many drugs. Take your sister. What did I do to piss you off? Why did you detain my car for no reason? Old Du's voice was far too sharp. He was clearly furious, but this voice made him sound like a shrew cursing in the street. Xie Junping could not help but laugh when he heard this. He understood. So that box of goods is yours? You're in the car? I'll run you over in the car. Xie Junping did not mind. He slapped the steering wheel and laughed. Old Du, I'm not trying to criticize you. Even if it's easy to get a driver's license, don't let an idiot take it. He's reckless. One mistake and the casualty rate will skyrocket. Your old man at the traffic office will get angry with you. Xie. Okay. Don't worry. I'll give the security office a call and have you drive the car away. But that idiot driver will have to serve me tea and apologize. You're nothing. The trembling voice of the sharp voice could be heard clearly from the car phone. It's your turn to sell your ass? My car has already been towed back. If anything happens to the materials inside, Xie, I won't let you off. The other side hung up the phone after speaking. What the hell? Xie Junping had a baffled expression. He turned to look at Luo Nan and explained, this old Du Yong, we also call him Sissy Du, you should know him. He's the president of the Mystic Arts Research Society. He's usually a decent person, but he's a bit fanatical about the mystic arts. Plus, he takes too many drugs. Sometimes his brain isn't normal. Luo Nan was careless and got shot in the face. He was speechless. Xie Junping really did not understand the reason for Du Yong's anger. He muttered to himself, he's already been towed back. What the hell is he angry about? Another call came in at this time. Luo Nan recognized the caller this time. It was Xie Junping's best friend, Hu Huaying, who served in the student council. Brother Ping, where are you? I'm outside with Nanster. We have some business in the River Wu district. Nanster is here too. That night at Frost River Reality, this brother just happened to be there. He was knocked out by Huang Bingzhen's holy swap. Even though he had been unconscious at the time, he had woken up later on and asked around about the situation. He had roughly figured out what had happened. No matter what was said, Luonan was the one who led the special forces all the way to the room they were in and transported them out. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Luonan had saved their lives. Naturally, Hu Huaying looked at Luonan in a different light. Luonan also greeted Hu Huaying, "Brother Hu." Hu Huaying quickly cut to the chase. "I heard that you just helped the Mystic Arts Research Society seize Old Du's car?" Xie Junping was confused by the logic behind it. "What do you mean?" "What do you mean by, help, the Mystic Arts Research Society? You don't know? Not only did Old Du resign as president, but he also left the club. Before he left, he packed all the equipment and materials he had left in the club into his car. In the end, he was detained by the security office. The people from the club chased after him, but they were taken back untouched." CK. Xie Junping was shocked by the twists and turns in the story. Something like this had actually happened. This was no longer a matter of the former president resigning from the club. This was a matter of a complete change in the world. It was a matter of shedding all pretenses of cordiality. Just how chaotic was the Mystic Arts Research Society right now? Xie Junping shot a glance at Luonan. He could not help but think of the problem of the ownership of gear. It would be strange if this sort of Mystic Arts Research Society could wrestle with the Construction Society. What about the financial backers behind them? They just watched helplessly as the club tore at each other? All right. You said that a big financial backer withdrew his investment, right? Luonan's eyelids drooped. Xie Junping had already told him about this matter. But his understanding was different from Xie Junping and Hu Huaying's. Luonan knew that this matter involved the current situation in Xia City, especially the Order of Justice. Old Du really is a failure as a person. Xie Junping sighed at the Mystic Arts Research Society's lack of effort. He had quite a headache for a time. Luonan really couldn't just turn around and leave after today's matter. Not to mention the fact that his withdrawal of investment had aggravated the situation. There was also the matter of how the bidding between the Mystic Arts Research Society and the Construction Society would end. How would gear belong to them? All of these were troublesome. He slapped the steering wheel. "Fine. I'll go back and take a look." Luonan nodded. "It's good to go back first." "Don't. You've already made an appointment with someone. This is the first time we've met. You might have to call him master in the future. You need to leave a good impression. Don't ever be late." As he spoke, Xie Junping controlled the flying car to stop at the edge of the safety island. "It's not far from the school. I'll have Old Who come pick me up. You drive the Phantom over. You have the authority anyway. We won't delay each other. I'll let you know if there's anything later." Luonan looked at the time and didn't refuse. The Phantom flying car quickly drove away. Luonan sat in the front passenger seat without moving, allowing the flying car to move forward in automatic mode. Luonan was pondering over the matter of the Mystic Arts Research Society. According to the information the society had recently grasped, the Order of Justice was one of the biggest financial backers of the Mystic Arts Research Society. And it wasn't just Acumen College. The Mystic Arts Research Society was simply a standard in every school in the Pingjiang district. The shadow of the Order of Justice was behind all of them. The boundary between the secular world and the inner world could be blurred to the greatest degree in the field of the mystic arts. This was an excellent channel to absorb talents. However, during the incident at Frost River Reality last week, the majority of the dozens of priests and knights of the Order of Justice had died in the logic world. This included a first ablatum and 8 of the most elite ablatum knights. The fleshly body of the person in charge and Wang had been shattered. Only his soul had merged with the body of a demon, and no trace of him had been found. Right now, the elites of the Order of Justice in Xia City were all gone. Only Jing Xiao and Bays were left to support the overall situation. It was hard to avoid problems. It was worth noting that the Order of Justice did not immediately transfer members into the team to make up for the vacancy in Xia City. Instead, they were tossing and turning in other cities. They created what could be called a textbook example of pressure transmission. The Ability User Society of Xia City faced an external threat and quickly transformed it into internal pressure and censure. It was said that the upper echelons of the society had been having headaches for the past few days. Luonan sighed and his mind sank down. He roughly sensed the surging undercurrents of soul strength from the hollow depository. Then he continued to sink down, entering the interface of the format pyramid where it was difficult to determine the real and the real of the external neuron. Right now the interface, which had been like a turbid river, had undergone a major change in appearance. The format pyramid was still in the middle, but the turbid water that surged past and the cards that depicted people had transformed into a vast and majestic river of stars. 10,000 stars were spread out and dark clouds were spread out. There seemed to be a boundary between them, but they were fused into a furnace as a whole. It was difficult to distinguish them from each other. Such a state was the result of that night at Frost River reality. The hazy river of stars formed from the fusion of tens of thousands of life sketches had mixed together with the format pyramid. However, when one truly observed the interior of the format pyramid, one would be able to see that even though the stars were reflected and the light was like water, each level basically maintained its original state. The politician and priest levels were still empty, and the technician level only had the wraith sign. The student level seemed to be the most lively. Xie Junping and Cat Eyes rose and fell within the river of stars. It looked as if they were about to be lifted into the staff level. As for the staff level, there were the most obvious changes. Aside from the Crow, Inc., who had entered first, there was one more person. Chapter 270. Within the format pyramid, Beza's projected image seemed to be filled with a layer of clouds and dust, but there was the glimmer of starlight within. Luonan's mind shifted over and saw the starlight flow like a river. It rippled within the format pyramid, and there were layers of dark surging waves that pushed Beza's image up and down. It was an extraordinary scene. However, the current situation could not be supported purely by aesthetics. The uncontrollable growth of soul strength and the capacity of the hollow depository broke through the limit. This caused the interference between the mental and material planes to continue to increase, and the interference to the format pyramid grew stronger and stronger. Luonan was a bit worried. The layout of the format pyramid and the ranks of his believers would undergo a huge change when he woke up. Fortunately, this situation had not occurred yet. His mind swept over Beza's image, triggering a certain key. A long black shadow pierced through the clear waves of starlight. It was the materialization of the order frame, the dark chains. This marvelous chain was like a flood dragon. It bobbed up and down in the endless river of stars, appearing and disappearing from time to time. Right now, it was circling around the periphery of Baze's image. It made a slight sound, and the meaning behind it was probably a guide for Baze's order. That night at Frost River Reality, Anwang had tried to control the demon, but he had not succeeded. The uncontrollable chaos element transmitted through internal channels and corroded life. This was the most important reason why the elites of the order were wiped clean. Baze had been attacked back then. He had nearly exploded and died. In his despair, he had sought out Fairchild, hoping to obtain a dignified death. After Fairchild had restrained Baze, he had asked Luonan to use his order frame to help Baze comb out a new path of life. Luonan had indeed succeeded. Although Baze's life essence had been completely corroded and replaced by the chaos element, Luonan had established a brand new binding order upon this chaos. Baze relied on this to live in this world. But because of this, Baze's life was in Luonan's hands. Of course, Luonan had been asked by Fairchild to save Baze. He did not want to do anything to Baze. Luonan did not think that a strong person like Baze would be able to control him if he were to harden his heart and seek death. After that night, Luonan did not attempt to do anything to Baze. He was admitted to the hospital for treatment, distressed by the increased loss of control over his soul strength. Fairchild was summoned back by the upper echelons of the Order of Justice for questioning and investigation. The two sides did not contact each other. Many times, Luonan simply forgot about this matter. The unforeseen event of the Mystic Arts Research Society made Luonan's train of thought circle around. He was thinking, should I get in touch with this person? Luonan hesitated for a moment, but he didn't make his next move. Aside from the Wraith sign and ink, Luonan had not used this channel to contact or control anyone. It was one thing to treat a Darksider species that lacked intelligence and his own pets. But it was another thing to treat Xie Junping, Cat Eyes, and Baze, a highly intelligent life form. He didn't know what the Order framework could do. Moreover, contacting Baze because of the Mystic Arts Research Society was a little funny. After all, in the eyes of a powerhouse like Baze, the level of a school society was too low. Luonan shook his head and his mind left. As the saying goes, cultivation knows no sun or moon. To a large extent, it referred to the complete loss of one's grasp of time in the outside world when one was in a state of meditation. Luonan felt that he had walked a full circle in the format pyramid interface. In reality, nearly half an hour had already passed. The Phantom flew all the way in autopilot mode and entered the Riverwu district. The car's AI had long since entered Shui Lei's reserved address and designed a route. Soon, it brought Luonan to the Bashan building where the Divine Yu Gym was located. This was a large standalone high-rise building. It occupied an area of over 100 acres. Its name was Bashan, and its design was an imitation of the ancient Bashan furnace. It was a very famous landmark building in the Riverwu district. Bashan building was shaped like a mountain, wide at the bottom and sharp at the top. The lower level was a tidy office building, and the upper level was a business district with stacked heavy rocks. Various stores were scattered within, and there was an extremely brilliant green aerobic track that circled around the building and reached the Sky Garden at the very top. This should be one of the highest-class business districts in the Riverwu district. Gym Master Shio must be quite wealthy to be able to open a store here and open a gym. Luonan parked the car in the underground parking lot and took the elevator to the high-level business district. He then contacted Shui Lei and soon found the location of the Divine Yu Gym under Shui Lei's guidance. If the Bashan building was viewed as an artificial mountain, then the Divine Yu Gym should be located in the area halfway up the mountain. It did not take up a large amount of space. It was an open-style building with an ancient courtyard. The building was limited by the topography of the business district. The three courtyards were pushed up, occupying a corner of the building facing the sun. It was as if the building was built against the mountain. It was extremely elegant. Though it was located in the bustling business district, the front of the gym was quite simple. A simple signboard with the words, Divine Yu, hung on it. It was upright and proper. There was no money left behind and it lacked any distinguishing features. Shui Lei rushed out to welcome Luonan at this time. He was wearing the light gray training clothes that Luonan had seen him in for the first time. There was a symbol of a three-legged cauldron on his chest. His muscles bulged out the training clothes, making him look even more majestic. Luonan's gaze stopped on the three-legged cauldron symbol for a moment. He suddenly thought of the gym master's name. Of course, it was also the name of this gym. It was very likely that the gym master's name really came from the story of Yu forging the 9 cauldrons. A person was like their name. Looking at the appearance and layout of the gym master Xiao Xinyu was indeed an old-school figure. Shuelei didn't know what Luo Nan was thinking in an instant. He grinned, a bit embarrassed. Nanster, the gym master is currently teaching a small class. I'm afraid you'll have to wait a bit. Half an hour is fine. Luo Nan wasn't in a hurry. It's nothing. All right. Can I listen in for a bit? Shuelei scratched his head when he heard this. This class won't do. They're all 7 or 8-year-old kids. They're all unstable. Once they fall apart, it'll be hard to gather them again. Let's go to the mind study first and wait a bit. Luo Nan didn't insist. He followed Shuelei inside. He was just a bit curious. The gym master is personally teaching the children? When Luo Nan was young, his aunt and uncle had signed up for a few martial arts classes for the sake of training the children's bodies. It wasn't easy to see the owner of the class. Normally the class was taught by a coach. The gym and the training classes were different. There are few people in the gym. It's hard to allocate them. Plus, it's important for the children to build their foundations. So the gym master is personally coming. Shuelei turned his head to look. He lowered his voice and said, Actually, there are very few children who can persevere. They can't endure the hardships. The gym master also said that there aren't many who truly fit his path. There's no need to forcefully sculpt them, but he can't mislead the students. From a mischievous rock to an unpolished jade, it's enough to shine through. Maybe one day they'll be enlightened, and they'll be able to rely on this path. Luo Nan laughed as he looked at Shuelei. So what you're saying is that you fit the gym master's path? Shuelei wasn't polite at all. Yeah. The gym master once said that I'm quite similar to him when he was young. Chapter 271. The sky had turned dark long ago. There were not many lit places in the Daoguan. The front courtyard was a bit livelier. There were students and parents shuttling back and forth under the lights. There were very few people when they reached the middle courtyard. The corridor was lit, but it made the courtyard even darker. Shuelei led Luo Nan up the corridor on the left. They arrived at the back courtyard. It was pitch black here. No one could be seen at all. The lights of the corridor and the haze of the bustling city sprinkled down. Only then would they not be in total darkness. There aren't usually many people here, Shuelei mentioned. He then pointed at the pitch-black wooden building in front of them. We're here. That's the mind study. The wooden building looked long and wide under the dusky light. It practically took up most of the back courtyard. This surprised Luo Nan a bit. He had always thought that the mind study was a study or something like that when he heard Shuelei talk about it. He never expected it to be an extremely large room. It could already be used as a training ground. Luo Nan was even more certain when he walked into the mind study. This place should have been a training ground in the past. The floor beneath his feet was made of soft wood with excellent elasticity. It was very comfortable to walk on it after taking off his shoes. But it was certainly in use now. Quite a few items were placed inside. The layout was quite casual and it looked a bit messy. There was a short table placed near the door. There were a few cushions and a tea set on top of it. There was a stove next to the short table. It was used to boil water and boil tea. It was clean and tidy. It really did look like someone was here often. Shuelei turned on the lights. The lights only covered the area in front of the door. The layout inside was even more dusky and messy. The shadows were indistinct and it looked a bit terrifying. Shuelei was a bit embarrassed by this situation. The gym master usually lives here. This place is a bedroom, a study, a living room, and even a utility room. It's just that they aren't separated. Luo Nan was very baffled. Why? The gym master said that he's impatient and full of fire. He needs an open place to channel it. It's easy to get sick if he's stifled. Of course, we normal people can't do this. Shuelei took out the tea set, kettle, and other things used to entertain guests as he spoke. He turned on the stove to boil water. Who knew that his wristband would vibrate the moment he put the water in? He slapped his forehead after receiving the message. Nanster, sit here for a bit. I still have to go help my senior. Sorry. Go to hell. Of course Luo Nan didn't mind. The relationship between the two could be said to have been through life and death. There was no need to be so courteous. Shuelei, on the other hand, felt that he couldn't argue with them, so he put his palms together and bowed before hurrying over. It seemed that the dojo was indeed short of manpower. Luo Nan was a bit surprised. To be able to open a dojo in the Basan building, he should be worth hundreds of millions. Why didn't he hire a few more coaches? Or was it that business was too good for them to handle? Luo Nan recalled his impression of the Daoguan, but he felt that there weren't too many people in the Daoguan. There weren't many people staying in the back courtyard, and there weren't many people in the middle courtyard. It really wasn't lively. It was a little strange. He didn't think too much about it. Before the water boiled, he stood at the door and watched the wind. This sort of ancient building was rarely seen in the current Xia city. Though it was a bustling business district with an unending stream of people above and below him, the clamor of people was blocked outside the courtyard. It was truly a wonderful place to find peace amidst the hustle and bustle. Outside the mind study, 2 stone figurines lit up. The orange-red glow illuminated the entrance to the mind study, the corridor, and a small area of the courtyard. A gust of wind blew, and leaves rustled as they fluttered down. Only now did Luonan see that there was actually a large tree planted in the back courtyard. It was so thick that it would take 2 people to wrap their arms around it. Luonan was unable to make out its species for a time. He just felt the edge of the light reach out and the shadow of the tree danced. It was quiet and secluded. The rustling sound of the wind cleansed one's heart and mind. It made one's mind clear, and one's mind was silently born. Luonan stood under the wooden corridor outside the mind study. He was dazed for a time, and the sound of boiling water behind him woke him up with a start. He walked back through the door and brewed a pot of tea for himself. He was young after all. His thoughts were fickle. His faintly discernible thoughts quickly dissipated, and he sized up the furnishings within the room. This large room possessed many functions, and it made him quite curious. He immediately held the teacup, and his gaze swept over the various furnishings behind the dusky light. There were some places where the light couldn't reach and he couldn't see them clearly. He naturally used his mental senses. The range of his clairvoyance was around 10 meters, and it covered the entire area behind the door. His exquisite perception didn't let even the smallest speck of dust escape. Because of this, Luonan discovered that this place was actually quite clean. It couldn't be said to be spotless. However, it was often cleaned and there was a faint sense of order. It seemed that the arrangement of junk naturally separated a relatively independent area. It wasn't as messy and disorderly as Luonan's first impression of it. That's right. Luonan felt relieved. Gym Master Xiao was an old-school figure, so there was no need for him to make his own residence this messy. Luonan's interest was piqued after he understood the situation inside. He wanted to figure out how the functional areas represented by the orderly furnishings within the chaos were divided. There are books placed all around. Yes, there are pillows as well. That should be the study. There's a praying mat and it's quite close to the center. Could it be the bedroom? That side is full of furnishings. They look quite old. Is it a collection or is it a storeroom? Luonan pondered over the furnishings one by one, finding them quite delightful. Luonan's gaze roamed all the way, and he made a full circle before he suddenly stopped. There was a large furnishings not too far away from the door. It was an enormous round ball that took an adult to wrap their arms around. It was nearly half the height of a person when placed on the ground. As for the material, it looked like metal. It looked very heavy and there was nothing else in the surroundings. It looked very abrupt. Luonan couldn't think of a use for it, so he simply walked over to take a closer look. Luonan got closer and he felt a slight chill hit him in the face. It was icy cold to the touch. It was definitely made of metal. Was it hollow or solid? If it was the latter, the wooden floorboards might not be able to support it. Luonan looked below the metal ball. It turned out that there was a large bowl-like tray. The metal ball rested in the tray and it looked quite stable. Luonan reached out his hand to push it, but it didn't move. He increased his strength and this time it was too much. The metal ball was greatly dislocated in the tray, and it emitted a grinding sound. The sound was exceptionally clear in the empty and quiet room. Luonan was shocked and he hastily stopped his hand. He didn't know what the structure of the connection was, but he only used a bit of strength, and the metal ball began to roll slightly in the tray. It shook the floor below to the point of trembling. The spinning metal ball rubbed against Luonan's fingertips. Luonan could feel that there were uneven traces on the surface of the ball. It seemed to be broken lines and it was even colored. How could he not see a blurry pattern when the ball spun a bit? And it was luminous. There was something wrong with the style. Luonan was baffled when he suddenly felt that the blurry pattern was lifted up a bit. At first he thought that it was an illusion caused by the spinning, but then the grinding sound that came from the spinning disappeared. The spinning pattern continued to rise until it reached his chest. Chapter 272. Luonan was suddenly enlightened when he saw this. So it was maglev. In today's world, superconducting technology was greatly developed. Similar objects were not rare. The heavy metal ball hung in midair, still spinning. Luonan fiddled with it a bit and its speed increased slightly. The colorful lines on its surface pieced together to form a clearer diagram. Though Luonan was still unable to see what it was rather childlike. This colorful toy was a bit like the floating top Mo Peng had collected when he was young, but it was much larger. Perhaps this was a prop for children to use in class? Luonan fiddled with the metal ball and touched the tray. Judging from the way the two moved when they made contact, they shouldn't be superconducting materials. He couldn't help but be curious as to where the power source for the maglev was. He intentionally increased the precision of his senses. He looked through the metal ball's outer shell and sure enough he discovered a rather odd machine buried in the center of the ball. It didn't look like an electric motor. Just as he was pondering, the sound of footsteps came from outside. Shuelei greeted him. "Nanster, the gym master is here." Luonan rushed to the door and saw Shuelei walk in with a tall and thin man. Luonan didn't get a clear look at the man's face, so he followed his earlier preparations and bowed. "Gym Master Xiao." A loud bang exploded within the empty room. Luonan jumped in fright. He turned around to look and saw that the floating metal ball had already smashed to the ground. It overturned the tray and rumbled as it rolled on the cork floor. Shuelei reacted quickly. He rushed over and caught the rolling metal ball in 2 or 3 steps. Luonan's embarrassment was indescribable. He froze on the spot, not knowing what to do for a time. Shuelei placed the metal ball back on the tray, not forgetting to soothe Luonan's cheeks. "It's nothing. It's nothing. Gym Master Nanster, you guys chat first." Luonan gaped, but the words he had prepared beforehand were useless in this sudden situation. He could only lower his head and bow. "I'm sorry. Sit." Gym Master Xiao, who was standing at the door, walked to the back of the short table and extended his hand to point Luonan to a seat. His voice was dark and hoarse. It was faintly discernible. Were it not for the gesture, Luonan wouldn't have understood what he meant. Only now did Luonan truly see who had come. He was stupefied once more. This Gym Master Xiao was about 40 or 50 years old and was very thin like a bamboo pole. When the night wind blew in, his wide antique robe rustled, as if he could be carried into the sky at any time. The difference in light from inside and outside cast a few shadows on his skinny cheeks. At first glance, he looked like a skeleton whose skin was about to be weathered away. Frankly speaking, this gym master really wasn't good looking. But Luonan was no stranger to this sort of image. His grandfather had been tormented by illness all these years and it was the same. Could it be that this person's health is also not good? Gym Master Xiao was the first to kneel on the ground. Luonan knew that this was an ancient custom, so he learned to sit down. However, Gym Master Xiao only fiddled with the tea set, as if he wanted to brew tea for a guest. Luonan mulled over the wording in his mind, but unfortunately this was far from his forte. He needed time to sort things out again, so he could only maintain his silence. The training ground was silent for a moment. The quieter it was, the more awkward it was. Luonan wanted to speak a few times, but he was unable to find an excuse. He could only find something to do and pay attention to Shuelei through his mental senses. Shuelei placed the metal ball back on the bowl tray and flipped a switch. The outer layer of the ball was disassembled, and a mechanical device was taken out from the central cavity. It was also spherical, with a diameter of 6 or 7 centimeters. It was only the size of a fist, and its outer layer was wrapped in a fine metal mesh. Its inner layer was a device similar to a gyroscope. He fiddled with it a few times, then scratched his head. Clearly this toy was broken. Luonan dispelled his last bit of wishful thinking. This gave him the opportunity to speak. He lowered his head and apologized. "I'm sorry, Gym Master Xiao. I put that." He was halfway through his sentence, but he was unable to think of how to describe the metal ball. He was stuck and sweat appeared on his forehead. Gym Master Xiao was pouring water into a cup. He raised his head to glance at Luonan. "The Tai Chi ball." "Yes, the Tai Chi ball. That Tai Chi ball, I will definitely fix it." Cough. It seemed that Luonan was fated to not be able to speak a complete sentence today. The itch in his throat flared up and he was unable to block it. He could only turn his head and cough twice. Gym Master Xiao didn't really care. It was broken to begin with. It's already strange that it was able to last this long. He pushed a cup of tea in front of Luonan as he spoke. The itch in Luonan's throat had yet to subside. He took the cup, but he didn't dare to drink it. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold it in and choke it out. This was probably a lack of manners. Luonan felt rather helpless. Gym Master Xiao ignored him. He picked up the cup and drank it in one gulp, minding his own business. Then he lowered his head and played with the cup in his hand. Luonan had just spoken a few words, and now he had to enter a state of silence again. Luonan really didn't know what to do for a time. Xuelei saw that the situation was bad, so he didn't care about the Tai Chi ball anymore. He hurriedly put the mechanical device back into the cavity, walked over with hurried steps and knelt to the side. He poured tea for the two of them and he secretly winked at Luonan. He deliberately spoke in a loud voice. "Nanster, you don't need to be restrained here. The gym master doesn't care about common courtesy." Luonan looked at his kneeling posture, then at the teacup in his hand. He was speechless for a time. Luckily, Xuelei's interruption caused Gym Master Xiao to emerge from his state of silence. He continued to play with the cup with his head lowered, but he finally spoke. "I heard a few things about you from Xuelei. He recommended that you learn breathing techniques to treat coughs. However, I'm not a doctor. Breathing techniques aren't that miraculous." Luonan listened carefully, afraid that he would mishear. But when he heard the second half of the sentence, his heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Xuelei and Xuelei stealthily gestured for him to calm down. "Xuelei." Gym Master Xiao suddenly called his name. Xuelei jumped in fright. He hurriedly straightened his body and sat upright. "Gym Master. What did you say that day?" Xuelei opened his mouth and coughed a few times. Only then did he organize his thoughts. He carefully said, "I was talking about the things you said before, Gym Master. You can inspect the internal organs, move the 100 meridians and take in the soul through breathing." Xuelei didn't mention the more mysterious things like, observe the heaven and earth, know yin and yang and know the secrets of the gods, but the meaning was certainly conveyed. Gym Master Xiao didn't say a word for another 5 or 6 seconds. He just let the cup rotate between his withered and bony fingers. Just when Luonan thought that Gym Master Xiao was angry, Gym Master Xiao slowly raised his head. His sunken eyes faced Luonan. "I will speak empty words when I teach. I will give the youngsters a deep impression. I will let them remember a few words. I will also avoid teaching inflexibly and rigidly." Gym Master Xiao's gaze made Luonan's hair stand on end, but he still responded, "Yes." Luonan had to admit that even though Xuelei was a living example placed before his eyes, Luonan wouldn't believe most of Xuelei's mysterious description. He really didn't expect that he would be able to cure a serious illness by learning breathing techniques. He mainly wanted to avoid offending Xuelei. He also wanted to make his life more convenient in the future. Gym Master Xiao's words were more realistic. Luonan could naturally accept it. A few seconds of silence passed before Gym Master Xiao spoke once more. "No matter what kind of technique it is, you must start from the real thing. Time and volume are the correct path. Your body isn't suited for volume. Then what about time?" Luonan didn't understand for a time. Chapter 273. Luonan understood what he meant, but his train of thought was unable to turn back. He hesitated and did not answer. Gym Master Xiao gave clearer guidance. "You are a student, and you have other matters to attend to. I can teach you, but do you have enough time to absorb and digest it?" Luonan was speechless. He discovered that this was a very practical problem. His daily classes, the Society's general knowledge training, the daily consumption of Frost River reality, and his own research on formatting theory. Every single one of them took up a lot of time. Of course, he did not need to concoct drugs every day. His schedule was much more relaxed. It was not impossible to squeeze in a bit more time, but it was bound to be scattered and unbearable. How could he guarantee his learning results in this way? Luonan looked at Xuelei. Xuelei was stunned. Clearly he had not considered these things. In the end, Gym Master Xiao proposed a more practical method. "Make a schedule. Make a schedule for the entire day and show it to me." "Okay." Luonan had a ready-made schedule. It was the general knowledge training plan He Yuan had drawn up for him last time. He just needed to delete the specific course names and take it out for use. Luonan wanted to transfer it to Gym Master Xiao, but he suddenly discovered that Gym Master Xiao did not have his wristband on. Xuelei said hurriedly, "Just give it to me. The Gym Master isn't used to electronic products." "Okay." Xuelei took the information and connected it to the printer in the corner of the training field. He operated it. Luonan was a bit surprised. The wristband was not just a communication tool for modern citizens. It was an integrated pass that contained proof of identity, social privileges, assets, credit, and other contents. Luonan did not feel this when he wore the wristband, but once he lost it, he would immediately experience the feeling of being unable to move an inch. His uncle worked at the SCA. He had taught the children of his family a special social experience class. It left a deep impression on Luonan. Amidst the hum of paper being passed, Luonan was finally able to match Gym Master Shio with the image of an old-school character he had preset. It seemed to make sense to use this as an explanation. Shuelei handed over the printed form. Gym Master Shio swept his gaze over it and said calmly, "Who made this?" Luonan was startled. Shuelei laughed before he could respond. "Could it be Secretary He?" "Oh, it's Sister He." Gym Master Shio lightly shook the paper, causing it to shatter. Then, he placed the paper on the short table and placed the cup he had been playing with on top of it. "Not bad, I finally have time to sleep. If you want to learn the breathing technique, you must ensure that you sleep no less than 6 hours every night. Learning to breathe begins with sleeping." Luonan was stunned. He instinctively looked at Shuelei. The latter winked at him fiercely, signaling him to agree. Gym Master Shio didn't wait for Luonan to speak before saying, "There's no need to rush to answer. Go back and think about whether or not you can guarantee a stable routine. Then you can make a decision." With that, Gym Master Shio raised his hand, indicating that he could leave. "That's it? Is this dojo master easy to talk to or not easy to talk to?" Luonan felt a bit uncomfortable. His brain was a bit numb, so he let Shuelei lead him to salute Gym Master Shio, bid him farewell and leave. The two continued to follow the walkway back. On the way, Luonan was still pondering, learning to sleep? You learn to breathe in your sleep. Shuelei corrected his misconception. The sleeping immortal technique, the nose-locking technique, and the sleeping dragon hibernating technique have existed since ancient times. Gym Master Shio chose this point to cut in. He must have taught you in accordance with your current situation. Luonan grunted. He wasn't doubting Shuelei. The world was vast. There were all sorts of strange things, especially within the scope of supernatural powers. Just from what Luonan knew, Mr. Bai's dream technique was closely related to sleep. There was also Ruewen. She had already slept for over half a month. Luonan was certain that she used sleep to adjust her state. Gym Master Shio had said something extremely well. No matter what kind of technique it was, one must start from the real thing. Only when one truly learned it would one know if it was useful or not, and how effective it would be. Shuelei still possessed this level of patience. Luonan's brain finally sprang to life, but he remembered something else. Oh right, the Tai Chi ball. Luonan still didn't know what a Tai Chi ball was, but he had broken someone else's equipment. It was clear as day. He needed to give Shuelei an explanation. Shuelei couldn't help but scratch his head when he heard the words Tai Chi ball. That thing really is broken. Forget it. Don't worry about it. Concentrate on organizing your routine. Work hard when you get back. I'll think of a way to fix that thing. Luonan really wasn't familiar with the situation. He could only say, "I'll pay for the repair fees. We'll talk about it later." Shuelei chuckled and led Luonan outside. The two passed through the atrium and the front courtyard. There was practically no one in the Daoguan right now. Shuelei explained to the deserted situation. "We haven't been recruiting new classes lately because we're about to move." Luonan had been in the back courtyard for over half an hour. He had a deep impression of the quiet and secluded feeling of the Daoguan. Why would they move such a good place? Shuelei sighed. Gym Master won this place in a bet with someone in order to settle down in Xia City back then. The property itself belongs to Boshan Industries. The person who made the bet only paid 10 years of rent. Now that the lease is up, the rent for renewing the lease is astronomical. We don't have the savings. Gym Master isn't good at business. His days are quite bitter. The two had already walked to the entrance. Luonan turned his head. It was hard to imagine what it was like to be unable to earn money in such a bustling area. But when he saw the simple words "God You" on the Daoguan signboard and thought about Gym Master Shio's temperament, Luonan felt that Shuelei's words weren't strange. Back then Xiaolin said that if the Gym Master sublet the Daoguan and switched to a smaller place, he would have been rich just from the rent alone. He wouldn't have ended up like this. Shuelei was a bit unnatural when he mentioned his ex-girlfriend. Luonan laughed awkwardly. Frankly speaking, he never thought of subletting. Judging from Shuelei's tone, it seemed the same. Everyone here didn't have any brains for economics. Luonan bid farewell to Shuelei and didn't delay any longer. He rode the phantom flying car straight to Renai Hospital. Since he had to go to the Daoguan, his treatment and study time were pushed back to the evening. Time was tight, and he needed to discuss matters concerning his schedule with He Yuan. However, when Luo Nan arrived at the hospital and saw Bai Xinyan, He Yuan was nowhere to be seen. If you want private tutoring today, you'll certainly be disappointed. The accident investigation team from the society's headquarters just arrived in Xia City half an hour ago. Bai Xinyan gestured for Luo Nan to take off his clothes and put on his equipment. She raised her eyebrows when she saw Luo Nan staring blankly in place without moving. Student Luo Nan, please don't make your disappointment so obvious, okay? Ever since He Yuan had revealed Bai Xinyan's intentions, Luo Nan's resistance to her teasing had increased greatly. In a certain sense, this could be considered a kind of confrontation. He thought for a moment and asked, "Investigation team. What does she mean by adding the accident?" Bai Xinyan placed a hand on his shoulder. "Gym Master Xiu, what did he say to you?" Chapter 274. When a man and a woman maintained gazing at each other for a long time without any physical desires or emotional connection, they could only be understood as the manifestation and transmission of dominance. Luo Nan certainly did not think that much, but Bai Xinyan was able to grasp the subtle meaning within. From her point of view, Luo Nan was far from being able to dominate others with his current capital. He also hadn't truly felt the domination of others towards him. Then the answer was very obvious. This was merely a display of his emotions, nothing more. In other words, childish. There was really no meaning in maintaining the same channel as a childish boy. Bai Xinyan did not want to force herself. She simply reached out and pressed down on Luo Nan's eyes. "The color of your pupils is really ugly." She let go of Luo Nan's hand before he could struggle. She circled to the other side, completely ignoring Luo Nan's expression. She was pondering something in her mind. This kid's hostility has been growing more and more intense since Frost River reality. It's completely unreasonable. Luo Nan pressed down on his ears while she was pondering. He subconsciously took 2 steps away. He must have received a message from the psychic wave network. The person contacting him at this time was most likely He Yuan. 2 seconds later, he received a communication request from Bai Xinyan. It was He Yuan on the other end. This was a 3-way communication initiated by He Yuan. Bai Xinyan was not a member of the society, but for the sake of convenience, she applied for temporary permission to use the Hexa-year. Ouyang Chen was always very generous when it came to promoting the results of his own research. He handled it very easily. As a result, Bai Xinyan could observe the daily ecology of the Xia City branch from a close distance. She could gather the relevant information in a relaxed and happy manner. With such a big-hearted direct superior and many colleagues below her, the nun's heart would not be at peace after her retirement. Bai Xinyan smiled and greeted her with a bit of pity. "Hello, Sister Nun. Are those imperial envoys finished serving you?" He Yuan ignored Bai Xinyan's teasing. Perhaps she did not want to mention those people at all. She cut straight to the point. "I hope to hear your opinion on Mr. Luo's study arrangements at the Daoguan." "I have no opinion. It's because your boss didn't mention this matter to me at all. I wonder if he has an opinion of Gym Master Xiu? Or does he have an opinion of me?" Luo Nan was speechless at such an open and above-board complaint. However, it was impossible for him to continue stubbornly at a time like this. He could only comfort himself by saying that he had learned a thing or two. Following that, he explained the main points of his trip to the dojo in a few words. In truth, there was nothing much to say. Gym Master Xiu's meaning was very clear. He could teach them, but he had to arrange the time well. At most, the time period required was somewhat against the norm. That was all. He Yuan pondered for a moment, then asked Bai Xinyan, "Will it affect your treatment?" "Not at the moment. Of course, if you guys don't mind, I can add a research project. I want to see whether or not student Luo Nan's absorption and transformation efficiency has improved under the guidance of Gym Master Xiu." "Alright. What do you think of Gym Master Xiu? Serious? Cordial? Smooth? Solitary? Aren't you going to explain to Secretary He?" Bai Xinyan's ability to make use of every opportunity was unparalleled. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He didn't want to answer. Fortunately, at this time He Yuan forcefully returned to the main topic. "It's fine as long as it doesn't affect the treatment. For the other projects, there was still room for adjustment of the timetable. Some pure knowledge projects for general knowledge learning can be taught through the psychic wave network. It would be even more ideal if they could be combined with the health pod treatment. The training time at Frost River reality isn't much. The plan is feasible. However, let's postpone the particularly brain-burning classes for now. Excessive mental tension will certainly affect the effects of treatment. Most of them are general knowledge memories. The intensity isn't great. I will remind the others about the specifics. The two ladies took on the responsibility of drawing up the schedule, and it became the main axis of discussion. They only consulted Luo Nan, the person involved, on a few details. After taking a rough shape, He Yuan contacted the society members involved in the schedule one by one. Soon, a brand new schedule was completed. Luo Nan had a subtle feeling when he saw the brand new schedule appear before his eyes. It was as if he was an outsider. He was on a completely different rhythm from the two ladies. Luo Nan quickly suppressed this peculiar feeling. He asked, "Should I take this form tomorrow and contact Gym Master Xiao?" He Yuan grunted. She seemed to want to say something, but in the end she simply said, "Show it to him. If there are any problems, you need to actually do it before you can make adjustments. Today we'll first do an experiment. We'll see the effects of networked learning in the treatment pod." Bai Xinyan pressed down on Luo Nan's shoulder. "Hey, did you hear that? I told you to take off your clothes." Luo Nan gritted his teeth as he took off his clothes and entered the pod. Bai Xinyan was quite considerate in delaying the Frost River reality treatment. She gave the next hour to He Yuan. Today's general knowledge course was still the world order in and out of the psychic wave network. Luo Nan put on the immersive helmet early on, but he did not activate it for the time being. He connected to the psychic wave network through the hexaear and entered learning guidance mode according to He Yuan's instructions. The first thing Luo Nan saw was the home page of the society. It was also the main interface of the game, 10 Days in the Wilderness. The scenery of the wilderness, which he had only seen with his own eyes in a few social practice classes, appeared before his eyes. The rust-colored soil was like waves of solidified ocean waves. It extended into the distance, seemingly without end. The bulletin board, which had the style of a Western cowboy, seemed to be within reach. Looking at this scene, it seemed that he would be able to enter the wilderness with just one more step. "Why don't you give it a try?" A clear and distinct voice rang in his ear. This feeling was far too real, so much so that Luo Nan instinctively turned his head. Then he saw He Yuan. Right now, He Yuan was still wearing a well-tailored professional suit. The material was navy blue, and the inside was a white shirt that would never go wrong. Then there were long pants that accentuated the slender shape of her legs. She appeared confident, clean, and lively. This was her usual style of dressing. She would not dress up in the slightest bit of use. She would not have any other adornments. Luo Nan often saw this sort of image, but today was a bit different. This was because He Yuan's body was clearly draped in a layer of dreamy light. The original meaning of this light was to remind him that what he saw was not a true form. But the light contrasted with He Yuan's jade-like porcelain body. That sort of inhuman texture had a powerful impact that made Luo Nan lose his voice for a time. Chapter 275. Luo Nan was more or less in a daze when faced with He Yuan's new image. He only woke up from his dream when He Yuan's gaze, which seemed to have substance, shot over. "Can I?" The hexaear invented by President Ouyang Chen was the terminal device of the psychic wave network. There were 6 communication levels in total. Most awakened were able to realize extremely convenient network functions through the first 3 levels. It was enough for daily use. The simulator belonged to the 4th communication level. Luo Nan had heard Mr. Bai talk about it before. This function was similar to the out-of-body state. One could realize the materialization of one's own logic on the psychic wave network. It was similar to the experience of virtual reality. This was already a relatively high level. Many people in the society couldn't handle it. Luo Nan was a mentally enhanced individual. He possessed the ability to send his soul in the out-of-body state early on. He had an advantage in this aspect compared to the majority of people. Mr. Bai had long determined that Luo Nan should be able to enter this level. But Mr. Bai also said that Luo Nan absolutely couldn't use the simulator function before the problem of the imbalance between body and soul was resolved. Otherwise, it was very likely that his soul strength would continue to grow, bringing even greater pressure to his body. He Yuan responded to this question. Because of the results of President Ouyang's logic world, the simulator function has undergone a large change. It is currently in a debugging state. After entering this level, the consumption of soul strength will increase exponentially. So as long as we control it properly, we can escape before the positive gain appears. Time is precious. We can begin. Okay. Luo Nan responded simply. He Yuan didn't directly engage in practical training. Instead, she reviewed the old and learned the new. Last time I told you about the concrete form of supernatural powers on the psychic wave network? Yes. Regarding supernatural powers, the East traditionally calls it qi. Some people in the West call it mana. Burners call it internal energy. The society's official name is telekinesis. No matter what it's called, it's fundamentally an energy information bestowed with order by the ability user. Luonan really liked the term bestowed order. This was in line with the comprehension he had gained from cultivating to this day. This made him talk without end. Therefore, the hexaear invented by President Ouyang is called a telekinesis according to the society's definition. Its built-in electronic components are not sophisticated, but it can guide psychic power to form a special terminal structure to achieve the analysis and control of energy information. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. From Luonan's perspective, the terminal structure of the hexaear was just a simple configuration. In terms of precision, there was still a large disparity between it and the external neuron and the deep-sea Type 4 dynamo core. It was even a bit inferior to the imitation chipset he had seen at Frost River Reality. But the most amazing thing about this invention was that it made full use of the ability user as a carrier. Through guidance, a relatively simple structure could be used to great effect. If a description had to be made, then the dynamo core and the imitation chipset were roughly equivalent to fully automatic weapons. As long as one knew how to operate them, they would be able to display astonishing effects in the corresponding field very quickly. As for the Luer, it was like a famous sword in ancient times. In the hands of a child, it might not even be able to kill a chicken. But in the hands of a peerless swordsman, it could defeat 1,000 troops and be invincible. Of course, this description might not be appropriate. Luonan had yet to truly explore the dynamo core's inner workings. He did not have an accurate understanding of the upper limits of the hexaear. But this did not hinder his feelings of admiration towards President Ouyang Chen. This kind of simplification and precise and appropriate structure made him, a beginner who had been painstakingly studying soul configuration to improve efficiency, only sigh in amazement. If his soul configuration had been purified to this degree, the external neuron would not have been stuffed to the point of bursting from the rapid growth of soul strength. Luonan thought about his current situation of being helpless when facing the enormous barrier lake. He had the impulse to run over and take Ouyang Chen as his master. He Yuan was not surprised by Luonan's deep understanding of the hexaear and the psychic wave network. She had experienced Luonan's outstanding ability to understand this course during her last lecture. This was under the premise that the political form and content were not involved. She just added a bit. In the first 3 levels of communication, the hexaear only needs to transmit and interpret the information flow. But when it comes to the simulator level, it involves the sharing of energy. In other words, the telekinesis of tens of thousands of people is used to support an enormous virtual world. In this world, the transmission of energy and information is extremely efficient. Just like last time when we faced, that fellow who controlled the human-faced arachnid? Luonan nearly blurted out Mo Luan's name. During the operation against Jack back then, Elder Mo Luan of the Blood Flame Order had brought the human-faced arachnid to hunt for food. It had brought He Yuan and the others a great deal of trouble. In the end, He Yuan had borrowed Ouyang Chen's power through the psychic wave network to repel the arachnid. That scene was still fresh in Luonan's memory. He could not help but ask, can it be done as long as one enters the simulator level? In theory it's possible. But the burden is very heavy and the authority required is very high. Perhaps there will be improvements in the future. The psychic wave network has undergone a fundamental change due to the integration of the logic world. What we need to do next is to understand it as comprehensively as possible before most people arrive. He Yuan's reminder made Luonan suddenly realize that he was clearly standing at the entrance to the wilderness, but he did not see the silhouette of a single person. How many people usually come here? The average number of people online is around 800. That's a lot. How many awakened are there in the entire Xia city? I'm talking about the entire world. He Yuan supplemented with an explanation. Aside from mentally enhanced people who can send their souls and leave their bodies, the vast majority of people have to become architects before they can come into contact with this level. And sending their souls and leaving their bodies are extremely rare among ordinary awakened. So under normal circumstances, every person you come into contact with here is a veteran. Luonan was a bit stunned. Then isn't it a bit early for me to come here? He Yuan did not respond to this question. She walked slowly, stepping into the wilderness with a single step. The radiance of her translucent figure caused the dark red background color to brighten up. Then she turned to look at Luo Nan. The name of the society is the Wilderness Explorers Society. The main direction is the wilderness. Of course, this also includes the even more dangerous oceans. President Ouyang chose the 10 days in the wilderness game as the main interface. This wasn't a random choice. This was a very good place to learn basic tactics. We'll focus on adapting today. If there aren't any abnormal reactions, then Crag Burst will lead you here to learn tactical commands for the next few days. He is also the only one among your instructors who can enter the 4th level. The other classes will be interspersed. Luo Nan knew that the time for idle chatter was over. He nodded in agreement. There's one more thing. Yuan suddenly smiled. This smile came without any warning. It was resplendent and dazzling under the reflection of the illusory radiance. It was dazzling. Then she waved her arm through the air. A second later, a mirror appeared at the border of the wilderness. The mirror reflected a ball of fuzzy light. It was like a drifting mist. In the center of it, one could faintly make out the shape of a tetrahedron. This was... Luo Nan suddenly realized something when he saw the angle of the mirror. Chapter 276. This was the first time Luo Nan entered the simulator level of the psychic wave network. Since the feeling was similar to that of an immersive device, it lacked a bit of novelty. He just treated this as a virtual reality experience unique to ability users. He never expected that his appearance in this world would actually be like this. Luo Nan thought about how he had used this appearance to communicate with He Yuan. It was hard for him to avoid embarrassment. No wonder she wanted to laugh. A rare smile appeared on He Yuan's face, but it was extinguished in an instant like a firework. Then she returned to her usual calm. You're still lacking in self-reflection. If you want to move normally here, you must first establish your own image. So I have to mold a mold like in some games? It's self-awareness. Self-portrait? The two instantly communicated a few concepts. He Yuan originally wanted to give a more detailed explanation, but she stopped when the words reached her mouth. She only kept the mirror. How you want to establish your image is up to you. Luo Nan stared blankly in front of the virtual mirror for a while. He saw how serious He Yuan was. It was hard not to overthink things. But he couldn't think of any other ideas no matter how much he pondered. His thoughts stirred at once, and the mirror's reflection formed a rough outline. The general process was no different from his daily sketches. Luo Nan had once mentioned to Xie Junping that he wasn't too good at self-portraits. This was not an excuse. He had never been able to grasp his own characteristics, so he could only draw a likeness. But compared to the vast majority of people in this world, his ability to mold himself was quite reliable. Soon, the fuzzy glowing body in the mirror transformed into a simple human figure. It slowly enriched and fine-tuned. When it took form half a minute later, it was already 70 to 80% similar to Luo Nan himself. If he was a bit more detailed, he would certainly be able to do it even better. Is this okay? Luo Nan raised his hand. He felt that it was more or less the same as a solid state, so he turned his head and asked. He Yuan looked at him for a long time and shook her head slightly. Luo Nan asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "This is a trick." He Yuan walked back to Luo Nan's side. On the simulator level, our image should reflect the characteristics of our individual energy and information operation structure. According to President Ouyang's explanation, it can be considered a self-logical inspection. For example, me. As she spoke, He Yuan raised her hand. Her long and slender fingers slightly spread open, indicating for Luo Nan to look over. My current image isn't what I want it to be. However, a burner's inner energy, the circulation of energy and information was based on the form of light and heat. That was why my image was unavoidably glowing. Others can tell at a glance that I'm a burner. Luo Nan stared blankly at He Yuan's jade tube-like fingers for a while. He finally understood. In other words, the image on the simulator level is also some sort of objective reality. At the very least, it's a kind of projection. It's not something that can be made out of whatever you want. He had indeed thought it through. However, when he looked at his reflection in the mirror, he could not help but scratch his head. But I am still not an awakened. I haven't figured out my own logic yet. Luo Nan found a good reason, so much so that He Yuan was stunned for a moment. Then she nodded. Indeed. This point must be taken into consideration. Let's move on to the next stage and see how it goes. She indicated for Luo Nan to follow her as she spoke. stepping into the boundary of the wilderness with a single step. Luo Nan carried a strong sense of curiosity as he followed behind. He even reached out his hand to touch the notice board within the sandstorm. The roughness of the touch immediately returned to him. It's made of wood. The boundary between reality and illusion instantly blurred. Luo Nan turned his head, but the so-called entrance had long since disappeared. All he saw was the boundless, rusty red earth. Instead, the outline of a building appeared in front of the notice board. Right now, he could be considered to have truly entered the simulator level. Luo Nan did not have the energy to sigh with emotion. He Yuan's practical lesson was absolutely not to bring him to see the scenery. He Yuan took him to familiarize himself with the environment for the next 20 minutes. The main location of the activity was a small town that was completely the same as the setting of the 10 days in the wilderness. It was called Blood Rock. In the game, this was the supply point for players and the place where missions were issued. But on the Psychic Wave Network, this place was more like a large salon. People who are online will carry out exchanges and discussions here. Discussions about what? Luo Nan had originally thought of using the idea of porting the game, but he suddenly discovered that his thoughts were childish when he heard He Yuan's introduction. Each and every one of these veterans were outstanding and famous characters of the inner world. They all had their own abilities and their own pursuits. How could they have the leisure to run here and play games? I've only come here once after joining the society. I didn't participate in the specifics. But I heard President Ouyang say that the topics they discuss are mostly related to self-logic, energy structure, mental and material interference, and other domains. Luo Nan blinked. We can talk about it offline. But it's not as convenient as here. The Psychic Wave Network is built by tens of millions of ability users. It's like a supercomputer. President Ouyang and the others can utilize the resources here to establish models that are hard to realize in reality. Alright, the style was quite appropriate. The problem was that Luo Nan had never seen such a dilapidated salon before. He Yuan led Luo Nan to walk on the central street of the small town. There was not a single soul in sight. The entire small town looked as if it had just been ransacked by a tornado. The vast majority of the houses had collapsed into ruins. Only a few buildings remained in their original state. Practically every building is an independent section. A portion of them are portals for the game. They provide entertainment for people, but most of them are experimental models. They are the crystallization of the wisdom of many people. What's going on right now? The influence brought about by the logic world. He Yuan spoke softly. Since President Ouyang added the results of the logic world into the mix, the simulator's structural laws have undergone great changes. The vast majority of experimental models are unable to adapt to the changes in the environment. They have all been destroyed. The logic world? Luo Nan had a general understanding of the principles of the construction of the logic world. The structure of deep interference between the mental and the material was indeed very unfriendly. But the method of recreating the world through spatial faults was truly a mountain to behold. Sister He, are you saying that this place is equivalent to another logic world? He Yuan shook her head. This isn't my field of expertise. Luo Nan couldn't get an answer. He turned his head to look all around, but he couldn't see things clearly. He thought for a bit and walked to the edge of a ruin. He lowered his head to size up the rubble and rubble. The shape of a snowflake. How orderly. These ruins looked messy and disorderly from afar. But upon closer inspection, Luo Nan realized that each piece of debris displayed a certain structural pattern. He could find some sort of rule in each piece. It was nearly impossible to accomplish this in the real world. The difference between natural and artificial. Luo Nan extended his hand and picked up a piece of rubble. He wanted to seriously study it, but his fingertips lightened just as he lifted it halfway. The rubble fell to the ground. Luo Nan was a bit stunned. Chapter 277. Luo Nan instinctively reached out his hand to grab the crushed rock. The feeling of touch, weight, and so on still existed. He really did grab the crushed rock. Right now he was squatting on the ground with his back to He Yuan. His picking and tossing actions were very normal. He Yuan's attention wasn't on this. She took advantage of this time to continue introducing the simulator. The Psychic Wave Network was established by President Ouyang. The virtual world is also endowed with basic order by him. However, President Ouyang didn't completely control it. Instead, he gathered the collective wisdom of researchers and endlessly adjusted it, turning individual order into public order. Blood Rock Town is one of the important pivots in establishing order. Luo Nan's attention was diverted a bit by He Yuan. He withdrew his gaze from the crushed rock and turned his head to ask, "Isn't this very troublesome?" Actually, what Luo Nan wanted to say was, why did he have to strip away his exclusive authority without rhyme or reason? This would certainly impede him, right? He Yuan was just about to respond when her gaze shifted to the side. Luo Nan looked over as well and saw the largest public exchange area in the town. It was similar to a tavern. The wooden swinging door swayed with a banging sound and a figure walked out. There were other people in the town? The other party clearly heard the conversation between Luo Nan and He Yuan. He directly opened his mouth and said, "How can a single person control the complete structure of a virtual world? Even if they do, who would come here under the conservative and closed rules and order?" This was a man around 40 years old. He could be said to be in the prime of his life at this age. The newcomer's appearance was indeed decent. He had a tall stature and wore a fitted suit. His accessories were extremely exquisite, but they didn't match the environment of the town. Actually, He Yuan was also like this. The two of them were dressed like white-collar workers and gold-collar workers in large corporations. They weren't explorers wandering the wilderness. Plus, they clearly knew each other. After interrupting, the person greeted, "I heard that the simulator has been modified. I specifically asked President Ouyang for temporary privileges to come and take a look. I'm not bothering you guys, right?" He Yuan responded with a faint "Mr. Yuan," and didn't say anything else. Mr. Yuan revealed a faint smile as he walked over from the main street. However, he didn't go to He Yuan's position. Instead, he walked to Luo Nan's side. His tall figure formed a striking height difference with Luo Nan, who was crouching on the ground. Luo Nan wanted to get up, but Mr. Yuan spoke a step ahead of him. "In this day and age, no one can eat alone. Everyone can abandon anyone who wants to form a monopoly. Just like a listed company, the rules and profits obtained must reflect the interests of every shareholder. So I have to say, President Ouyang has made a very wise choice." "Who is this?" Luo Nan finally stood up. He really didn't like the attitude of this person. It should be said that he was disgusted by the large capital of Quantum Corporation. He didn't like all such remarks. Moreover, this person's evaluation of Ouyang Chen was rather arrogant. To think that he was still in the psychic wave network. Did he not even understand basic respect? A light flashed in Luo Nan's mind when he thought of this. He had a general idea of the identity of the person who had come. Sure enough, He Yuan gave Luo Nan an introduction. "Little Luo, this is Mr. Yuan Fei of the Society's headquarters Incident Investigation Team." "So, Xiao Luo?" Luo Nan discovered that he had been demoted. In reality, there was no problem with He Yuan addressing him this way. In fact, it was even more appropriate. He also knew that there might be some meaning behind it. But the human heart was subtle and hard to understand. His heart skipped a beat when he heard this form of address. He didn't feel too good. Luo Nan's performance was wooden in Yuan Fei's eyes. He didn't understand human affairs. Speaking of which, it was quite surprising to see such a fellow at the simulator level. Yuan Fei sized Luo Nan up with a few glances. Luo Nan's powerful posture made the young man feel very uncomfortable. He changed his crouching posture and stood up. Yuan Fei's eyes were clear and bright. He was very arrogant at such a young age. But to be able to enter the simulator level, Xia City had unearthed yet another talented person? Clang. An abrupt sound rang out. It was exceptionally clear in the quiet atmosphere. The gazes of the three people shifted to that side for a moment. They saw a piece of rubble tumble down from the rubble. Luo Nan looked stupidly at his own palm. Did it slip again? No, the feeling this time was much clearer than last time. That piece of rubble had fallen from the palm he had just condensed. It had pierced through his palm and the back of his hand. He subconsciously moved his fingers and examined them over and over again. Finally, he confirmed that his seemingly materialized palm seemed to be condensed from clouds. It was severely lacking in density, lacking in bearing capacity. It could only hold the weight of a piece of rubble for a moment. A slight distraction would cause the palm to dissipate. So it was like this. Yuan Fei shook his head and turned to He Yuan. "Miss He, the structure of the logic world has indeed become more and more complex after merging with the psychic wave network. We need to increase the maintenance power of technicians. But there's no need to spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. I think this child is quite good for being able to realize high-level applications of the psychic wave network at such a young age. But there's no meaning in forcefully entering the fourth level." Luo Nan was very unhappy to hear these words. What did she mean by forcefully entering? How am I forcefully entering? Just as Luonan was about to speak, a full-length mirror materialized out of thin air and stood by his side. It was not He Yuan's handiwork but Yuan Fei's. "You're Xiao Luo, right? Keep squeezing. It's going to fall apart." Luonan turned his head to look and was given a fright. It was unknown when, but his face had become swollen and swollen. His facial features were even a bit out of place. He looked ugly and ridiculous. Sunlight sprinkled down as he spoke, and part of the light even penetrated through his body. He did not look like a normal person no matter how one looked at him. The ability to interfere with the material plane is insufficient. It would have been fine if it was the old version, but the new version has greatly increased the effectiveness of interference power. It's like the increased pressure in the depths of water. If the structural strength is insufficient, it will lead to disintegration. Yuan Fei had one hand in his pocket. It was as if he was sizing up a very interesting toy. He even extended his hand and gestured a few times outside of Luonan's body. He turned his head to speak to He Yuan. "It looks like the new version has increased the entry threshold. It will be very strenuous for Xia City. Miss He, can you suggest to President Ouyang to let go of technical maintenance and let his colleagues from the other branches share the pressure?" He Yuan's brows furrowed slightly. The psychic wave network has been open-sourced for a long time. Technical maintenance is also carried out in Bloodrock Town. I'm talking about the basic structure. Yuan Fei shot a glance at Luonan and smirked. "Upgrading just like that. It's not just the children of Xia City that are troubled." Luonan looked at his increasingly inhuman reflection in the mirror. He tried to straighten it out, but the feeling was completely different from before he entered the wilderness. He felt a clear feeling of stagnation. When his telepathic thoughts cut in, it was as if he had bumped into glue. It was extremely strenuous to control. The more he tried to control it, the more serious the situation of his body's structural spillage became. In the end, his body completely collapsed into a mist, returning to its original state. Chapter 278. Naturally, the practical lessons in the simulator could not continue. He Yuan dealt with Yuan Fei in a simple manner before leading Luonan out of the psychic wave network to return to the plane of reality. Luonan opened his eyes, but all he saw was pitch-black darkness. A specially modified sealed helmet was already covering his head. It was just that the immersive guidance had yet to be activated. He just stared at this darkness, his thoughts flowing. Yuan Fei, who came from the incident investigation team of headquarters, had just arrived in Xia City. He didn't understand the situation. He saw that Luonan was young, yet Luonan had entered the 4th level of communication and tried to operate the simulator. He felt that failure was normal and that success was abnormal. He just laughed it off and didn't think about it at all. But Luonan was well aware of the situation of his body and soul being unbalanced. He also had enough of the pain of the uncontrollable growth of his soul strength. Suddenly, the problem of low interference power appeared. Anyone would stare blankly for a period of time when faced with such a contradictory phenomenon. He didn't have to ponder for too long before Bai Xinyan's surprisingly gentle voice transmitted over. "How does it feel to be in an out-of-body state on the psychic wave network?" Luonan was still tangled in the problem of interference power. He wasn't in the mood to respond, and he ignored the key elements in her words. Bai Xinyan took it as a tacit agreement. She seemed to sigh and laugh. "Only that seemingly open-minded but actually old-fashioned muddle-headed dad of mine thinks that you only have the ability to send your soul. His face has been beaten swollen these past 2 days. He doesn't dare to come out and meet people." Only now did Luonan realize what Bai Xinyan was talking about. So it turned out that the misunderstanding of his out-of-body state being treated as a sent soul had already been corrected? Mr. Bai really hadn't appeared these past few days. He Yuan had told him that she had invited him to teach, but he had been tactfully declined. As for the reason behind this, everyone was clear in their hearts. Even though Luonan was a factor, it was only a negligible amount. Luonan was disinclined to get involved in the conflict between this father and daughter. But then again, a woman who could make such a good-natured old man refuse to forgive her would only make him more vigilant. He was silent for far too long. Bai Xinyan misunderstood his thoughts. "You aren't the only young man who hides his head and shows his tail. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's just that it's a bit reckless to act like this to a doctor." "Hello, sister. I'm chatting with your boss right now." He Yuan had sent a message to Bai Xinyan, but only to Bai Xinyan. After the latter uttered a rather clear question, he also fell silent. Several seconds later, The inner layer of the sealed helmet lit up without any warning. The guidance process targeted at ability users began. Bai Xinyan's last words came, "Tonight's homework is starting. I hope you won't be lazy." Luonan didn't want to talk to Bai Xinyan before, but now he couldn't help but speak. Even an idiot would know that the problem He Yuan and Bai Xinyan were discussing must have something to do with his lack of interference power. He was the person involved. Why should he be excluded? This was a hospital, and he felt like he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. The whole world knew that he was going to die, but he was the only one who was kept in the dark. Wait a minute, the pessimistic attitude of the two in the private conversation last time, wasn't that what was going on? Luonan forgot to accept the guidance for a time. He stared blankly once more. At this time, even with the external neuron protecting his body and the void depository as a buffer, he couldn't stop his chaotic emotions. The next day, Luonan's mind was completely outside of the school curriculum. The symptoms of low interference power and the corresponding ominous omens had been plaguing him since last night. According to what he knew, He Yuan and Bai Xinyan had engaged in a long discussion after the incident, but in the end, they were unable to come up with a definite answer. Correspondingly, his altered schedule was facing a second major overhaul. Luonan could only wait for news before the revisions were completed. Most of the day passed in a muddle, but Luonan didn't receive a new schedule. Club activities began in the middle of the afternoon, and the other students got busy. Even Xie Junping, who had been accompanying him for the past 2 days, had a meeting to attend in the student council. Only Luonan was alive in the order club. He wasn't in the mood, so he didn't have any activities. Luonan was in a really bad mood. He arrived at the treehouse in the withered tree sandbar. He sat in the lounge, staring at the weak light in a daze. At first, he seriously pondered over the problem of interference power, but his train of thought was battered and bruised by one knowledge obstacle after another. And there were far too many special circumstances that could only appear in formatting theory. He couldn't find anyone even if he wanted to ask. In the end, his mood only worsened. He did a rough self-analysis in this helpless situation, trying to dispel these negative emotions on his own. Luonan had to admit that when He Yuan mentioned that there were only 800 daily users in the entire world on the simulator level, he couldn't help but feel a bit of superiority in addition to being nervous. But right now these emotions, which had just sprouted a bit, were directly cut off. He couldn't find any other emotions to fill the void for a time, so a feeling of emptiness and disappointment naturally grew. But this wasn't just a change in status or the like. It involved a more fundamental problem. The question that had suddenly appeared a few days ago without an answer was like the impending night. It caused endless shadows to silently creep over him. Luonan was alone within the shadows. He didn't have any point of support. Only the layer upon layer of chaotic emotions entangled him, forcing him to ask himself once more, did his grandfather's formatting theory really have flaws that were hard to resolve? For example, the uncontrollable growth of soul strength? For example, the lack of interference power towards the material plane? Was there anything else besides these 2 points? Was there an end? Luonan leaned against the inner wall of the tree hole. Practically all of his energy was being devoured by these cruel questions. He was in a trance, unaware of the passage of time. This lasted until his ear vibrated slightly. Someone was contacting him through the hexa-ear. He was a bit surprised when he saw the name of the contact person. "Hello, Boss Luo. Are you free right now?" Luonan rushed out from the treehouse. He passed through the underwater passageway and high-speed elevator to arrive at the main entrance of Gear. Not long after he arrived, a young man in his 30s arrived along the small path outside the building. It was currently late autumn. The jungle and wetlands were densely interwoven with vegetation, blocking out the sunlight early on. It was much darker than the outside world. The newcomer had deep footsteps and shallow footsteps. He walked quite arduously. When he walked into the area illuminated by the lights in front of Gear, he grinned. Beads of sweat had already appeared on his slightly plump face. "Boss Luo, this place of yours wasn't easy to find." "This place is pretty good." Chapter 279. The person who came was none other than the mentally enhanced Papercut, who fought shoulder to shoulder with Luonan on the night of the incident at Frost River Reality. Frankly speaking, this old man's appearance was far too ordinary. Luonan nearly didn't recognize him when they met again. Fortunately, Luonan still remembered this awakened. This awakened had a slightly bloated body as well as that amiable smiling face. even if Luonan didn't receive this treatment most of the time. Papercut's opinion of Luonan was mainly that his immature attitude had harmed the team. However, various facts later proved that Luonan was correct, so there was no need for this opinion to exist. Just call me Papercut. It feels weird to add Mr. to my nickname. Papercut grinned out of habit. Then don't call me Boss Luo. Boss Luo is your nickname, right? Papercut's smile was very infectious. I know that you have quite a few nicknames, but I won't change it. Everything goes according to the flow of the tongue. Luonan was a bit embarrassed. Papercut waved his hand before Luonan could say anything. Okay. Don't get tangled up in these minor details. I came to teach today. I'm sorry. Something happened at the last minute, so I pushed the time forward. Luonan responded politely, I'm the one troubling you. He invited Papercut into the building as he spoke. Papercut was one of Luonan's teachers for general knowledge training. He was responsible for imparting the practical course Soul Strength Activation Techniques. Papercut emphasized when talking about the course, this course is actually quite late. The reason why it was brought forward. It's because of my special circumstances. My interference power is low. Do I need to do a field experiment to verify it? Papercut was stunned. The teacups on the table were kicked all over with a bit of helplessness. In the end, he even practiced stone lock, you think throwing the teacups up and down as if he was a street performer. Am I wrong? Even though Luonan's mind was in a mess, Luonan couldn't be blamed when he saw the mini paper man's strenuous introduction of this course in his old schedule clearly stated that it was a practical course. This is the most basic application. Now that there was a problem with his interference into activation style and manipulation style, brought up the course. The former focused on simulating spirituality. Could this be considered a re-examination of a terminal manipulation? That being said, an animation type, course so I'm more casual and often do some auxiliary work. With such a nickname, Papercut's specialty was to use a special method to cut out paper tools and use soul force to endow them with all abilities are so capricious. Papercut very likely that you're talented and precise manipulation. Third floor of gear. Papercut began to paint a small paper doll and performed a comical The society has combat machines. Then he performed a set of military boxing on the table. Actually, his movements were agile and lifelike as if he really had a life of his own. They can fight and repair. The little paper man's strength was also quite impressive. Luonan's eyes drooped and he laughed. In order to do this, he first had to satisfy the basic requirements of interference power. If soul strength was unable to effectively interfere with the material plane, then everything else was meaningless. Speaking of repairs, however, he suddenly thought of the Tai Chi ball of Divine Yu Jim. The core component of the Tai Chi ball seemed to be a precise machine. Luonan had heard Shuelei mention it, but in the end, it hadn't been repaired. It was still tossed in the Daoguan. This matter needed to be handled properly. The maintenance engineers of the society were certainly a level stronger than those outside. Luonan's mind was a bit scattered, but he quickly recovered. He concentrated on listening to Papercut's lecture. Today, whether it was training, teaching, or symptom review, Papercut only taught elementary subjects. He taught the basic techniques of soul strength acting on materials. Papercut chose a special kind of talisman paper for his practice. It was said that it was obtained from another psychic of the society, Mr. Gao, whom Luonan had yet to meet. It was made from specially cultivated peach wood and bamboo pulp. The ratio was extremely meticulous, and it was one of the materials most suited to converge with soul strength. As for Papercut himself, he had a meticulous and patient personality. From the very beginning he began to manually operate the talisman. He broke down the steps and explained the few special points of force for the soul strength to be used clearly. From the principles to the operation, everything was extremely clear. Logically speaking, the difficulty shouldn't be high with such thorough preparations. However, the development of the situation simply followed the most pessimistic predictions. Luonan's learning process didn't go smoothly. It was already 6 o'clock in the evening. Luonan and Papercut held their breaths and focused their minds under the illumination of the lights in the tea room. They stared at the crude paper man on the table. This little thing, which had just been cut, stood up shakily, taking steps with great difficulty. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Then it fell to the ground, unable to get up again. Oh no! Luonan slapped the table with both hands, bringing about a gentle breeze that lifted the paper man up. Then there was the stream of air that Luonan exhaled with a long sigh. The little thing fluttered under the table. This series of movements was much more nimble than its previous struggling appearance. Luonan knew that he had lost control of himself. He hurriedly said, "Sorry," and got up, wanting to pick up the paper man. Papercut held him down. With a thought, the small paper man 5 meters away immediately came to life. It was like a ruffian monkey. It leaped and hopped, climbing the table leg and charged onto the table in a few steps. Luonan felt more and more ashamed when he compared the two. He laughed bitterly and sat back on the chair. He looked up into the sky and stared blankly. This doesn't make sense. Papercut scratched his head endlessly, but he couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he tried. His patience hadn't run out yet, so he pulled Luonan and said, "How about we sort it out a bit more and start from the beginning?" Luonan had no reason to give up when faced with such a teacher. He forced himself to raise his spirits and grabbed the small paper man on the table. His fingertips tapped across the paper man's head and torso in succession. There are a total of 4 soul strength focus points. They form 6 basic resonance lines to realize basic control. Luonan paused a bit upon speaking up to this point. He then said, "This is actually a kind of irregular deformation of a prism. It belongs to the structural changes in the operation of energy and information. The paper man is just a medium. The basic prism structure is the support. You chose to start with this structure. Is it because it's a bit similar to my format pyramid?" Chapter 280. Luonan calmed down. He fiddled with the small paper man between his fingers, then tossed it back onto the table a few seconds later. This is because the prismatic structure requires a certain amount of strength. If the strength you gave me was equivalent to a steel structure, then what I gave me would be a spider web at most. Strength. It's strength. That's right. Papercut was helpless. Of course, he knew that the crux of the problem was the strength of the structure. If he were to investigate further, it would be the problem of the interference of the mental plane with the material plane. But these were all superficial phenomena. Who could tell him that a mentally enhanced user with superb mental senses, who could send his soul out of his body as if it were nothing, and whose mental cultivation had nearly reached the B rank standard, couldn't even do the most basic thing of controlling objects with his mind? What was going on? In the end, there was no answer to this question. Not only was Papercut unable to get any results, but Bai Xinyan, who knew about this long ago, kept it a secret when Luonan went to the hospital for treatment. She didn't give Luonan any information that could be used as a reference. Luonan originally wanted to ask He Yuan, but after some thought he gave up on this thought for the time being. Problems on the mental plane were largely self-perception. If even he couldn't figure out what was going on, then it was impossible to count on others. The terrible state of affairs undoubtedly affected Luonan's mood. The following training sessions at the Frost River waterway were simply disastrous. The quality was extremely terrible. The amount of time Luonan could last was even less than in the morning. Compared to last night, his endurance had dropped by 20%. Luonan saw the relevant results and made preparations for additional training. However, Bai Xinyan didn't express anything. She let him pass the final moments of his time in the healing pod in peace. "I still have to learn new things tonight. It's best if I take a nap and relax. Alright, don't be late." Bai Xinyan made medical records as she waved her hand to let Luonan leave. In the past, Luonan would probably rejoice, but now he thought about it a bit more. Was this attitude a part of happy, fast healing? Sure enough, when a person is about to die, nothing is taboo. Luonan thought about the results of his peeping from 2 days ago, and his mood turned even worse. He really wanted to crack open Bai Xinyan's skull and figure out just what kind of state he was in her eyes. Or perhaps he wanted to peep again. The problem was, how could he have such an opportunity every day? Luonan left Renai Hospital with his mind in a jumbled mess. Tonight, he had already made an appointment to go to Basan Manor to learn breathing techniques from Hallmaster Xiu. Last time he went to the Daoguan, Luonan had the phantom flying car as a means of transportation. He had already returned the flying car to Xie Junping this morning. Right now he was riding a low-altitude public transport, rushing towards the River Wu district under the curtain of night. The first thing Luonan did after getting into the car was give his aunt a call. He informed her that he would be staying at the Daoguan tonight. In fact, he had already used Shui Lei's tiger skin to ask for leave from his aunt yesterday to confirm the situation of not returning at night. But he knew his aunt's temperament very well. Right now he had to make another phone call to comfort her. Otherwise, according to Madame Luo Shuqing, she would have personally brought him to pay a visit to Gym Master Xiu for his first official lesson. By the time he finally ended the call, they were already halfway through the journey. At this hour, the bus was no longer as crowded as it was during the day. There were only a dozen or so people on the bus. They were all groggy or playing games with their wristbands. Luonan sat at the back. He lowered his head and fiddled with his things. However, he was different from the others. He wasn't fiddling with an electronic device in his hand. Instead, he was fiddling with a thin greenish-yellow paper. This was a special talisman paper that Papercut had given him. It was personally made by the psychic Mr. Gao. The special material was more suitable for the transmission of energy and information. In the hands of a true expert, this talisman paper could be used to deal with enemies. It was a bit extravagant to use it for practice. But it would be fine if he could really get some ideas out of it. Luonan followed the technique Papercut taught him. He slowly operated and tore the talisman paper into a palm-sized paper man. The incorporeal prismatic structure took shape as a whole. At the same time, abundant soul strength poured down, completely submerging the paper man. Luonan could sense the texture of the paper, the rough edges of the torn paper, the crisscrossing creases. Not a single detail could be hidden from him. But under the effect of soul strength, the paper man in his palm merely rolled around in a half-dead state. It then became motionless. His soul strength nearly crushed his body. It seemed to have no practical significance on the paper man. It's still like this. What? Back at Frost River Reality, his support for Xue Weiluan and the other special police officers was no problem at all. The effects of controlling the Wraith sign, influencing cat eyes, and even his own mental attack were real. But why couldn't it work when it truly fell on materials? Luonan looked out the window. The colorful night curtain of the metropolis was like fluttering cotton. It was empty and hard to see the real thing. His mind naturally extended out, passing through the deep void and flowing within the sea of lights of the metropolis. His perception became more real. Within the clairvoyance of his perception, there were tens of thousands of living beings, the convergence of stars, and the meandering Milky Way. There were marvelous layers within, majestic and hazy. It was like a grand world, gorgeous and magnificent. But when such a grand structure of the Star River was cast onto the small paper man, not even a ripple was stirred up. The prismatic structure was still as strong as a spider web. He couldn't even feel any connection between the two. An incorporeal and ice-cold barrier separated his consciousness from the real thing. They were infinitely close, but they had never truly fused. It was like a dream and reality. Could it be that this power was all fabricated? Could it be that the crazy ravings of his grandfather only existed on the plane of imagination? No, this didn't make sense. The beam of light from Luonan's consciousness cut through the Star River. It definitely wasn't limited to a radius of 1 or 2 kilometers. There were many fulcrum points within the enormous metropolis. There were normal people, awakened ones, ablatum knights, crows, darksider races. They were real, giving him feedback at all times. How could this kind of perception be a dream? Luonan arrived at the Divine Yu Gym above Boshan building in a daze. It was already 9 o'clock in the evening. The students of the Daoguan had long since dispersed. Only Xue remained here. He came out early to welcome Luonan. Nanster, the gym master is waiting for you inside. Luonan suppressed his chaotic state of mind. He was a bit embarrassed. I'm late. Not at all. It's mainly because the Daoguan doesn't accept new business. We finished our business at 8 o'clock. You're actually quite early. It's mainly because you're just getting started. You'll need some time. Relax. I'll be your protector tonight. Xue pulled Luonan inside. The lights in the front and middle courtyards of the Daoguan had already been turned off. It was late in the autumn night. Luonan walked along the winding corridor. Luckily, Xue's voice was loud. It diluted this feeling quite a bit. Luonan was quite baffled. You're spending the night at the Daoguan as well? Of course. I've always been the gym master's assistant. Yes, I'm also an interpreter. Luonan and Xue had already entered the backyard in the blink of an eye. The light of the humanoid stone lanterns illuminated the front courtyard. Light and shadow separated, like an exquisite oil painting. Chapter 281. Luonan and Xue walked into the room. There were no lights on inside. The lights from outside only illuminated the entrance. Most of the other areas were filled with shadows, making it hard to see clearly. Xue turned his head to look for Xiao Xinyu. Luonan relied on the advantage of his mental senses to lock onto Xiao Xinyu's position a step earlier. Xiao Xinyu was sitting on the cork floor, leaning against the wall on one side of the corridor. His left leg was crossed and his right leg was upright. His sitting posture was casual. Not far away from him was the Tai Chi ball. He didn't know if it was because of the environment, but the current Xiao Xinyu was silent, almost gloomy. He did not react to the two young men who came in. Dojo Master Nanster is here. Shuelei finally saw where Xiao Xinyu was. He walked over and whispered. Xiao Xinyu grunted, then let's begin. Her straightforward and direct attitude made Luo Nan and Shuelei a bit stupefied. No matter what the two youngsters thought, Xiao Xinyu simply got up from the floor and walked to Luo Nan's side. His figure was tall and thin. He was a head taller than Luo Nan, who had yet to fully develop. He gave off quite a bit of pressure when he stood. The time I requested is from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., a total of 6 hours. Ideally, 6 hours a day would be enough for the first stage of learning. I asked you to come a little earlier today so that I can teach you basic techniques and also do some tests to get a feel for you. Luo Nan obediently complied. Although this gym master Xiao did not engage in any pleasantries or opening remarks, going straight to the main topic rather strangely, his words were still logical and clear. It was unknown where Shuelei's so-called translation came from. Luo Nan immediately complied with Xiao Xinyu's request. He lay flat on the sleeping mat that had already been prepared. Shuelei, on the other hand, lit a pot of incense in a very exaggerated manner, saying that it had the effect of helping people relax. The light was dim and the fragrance lingered in the air. In such an environment, it was not difficult to relax. Luo Nan's eyes narrowed slightly. He slowly adjusted his breathing and soon entered a state. At this time, Xiao Xinyu suddenly asked, "Have you learned other breathing techniques before?" "Yes, there is." Luo Nan had been practicing the chanting breathing technique since he was young. The majority of its functions were in visualization, but he also started with breathing. Also, he had obtained an extremely good demonstration from this inconceivable little girl Ruiwen some time ago. She had comprehended the rhythm of soul breathing. Soul breathing is also considered breathing, right? Luo Nan believed that he had some experience. Xiao Xinyu continued to ask, "Have you entered meditation?" "You mean the stationary state?" "Yes." At the side, Shuelei said happily, "That's good. You already have a very good foundation. You'll definitely improve at lightning speed." Xiao Xinyu glanced at Shuelei but did not say anything. He just let Luo Nan continue to relax. At the same time, Xiao Xinyu began to explain to Luo Nan the essentials of adjusting his breathing. In the beginning, Luo Nan only spoke in general terms. But under this sort of atmosphere, Luo Nan subconsciously and unconsciously followed the methods he had described. He carried out experiments. Xiao Xinyu probably had an accurate grasp of Luo Nan's state. He suddenly changed the way he spoke. He was shorter, directly touching on the deviation that occurred during Luo Nan's attempts, and he corrected it. Sometimes she would directly reach out and press on Luo Nan's body. She wanted Luo Nan's breathing and thoughts to be mobilized and concentrated in these areas. In the beginning, the taste of having someone controlling his breathing was unpleasant. Luo Nan controlled his breathing as he split his attention to receive guidance. His nerves were taut and there was no way he could relax at all. But Luo Nan had a foundation in the end. He soon discovered that many of the essentials Xiao Xinyu imparted to him happened to coincide with his current understanding. It gave him quite a bit of foresight when it came to certain details, and the specific control of his breathing became more unhurried. Moreover, Xiao Xinyu's teachings were not harsh on the details. It was like a faintly discernible lamp that led Luo Nan in front of him, so that he would not get lost. Luo Nan still followed Luo Nan's own habits and actions. It didn't take long for Luo Nan to adapt. His mind settled down. He controlled the intensity of his breathing, making it faintly discernible between his mouth and nose. His mind first resided in his mouth and nose. Then it moved to his throat, chest, lower abdomen, tailbone, and so on. He also visualized in reverse, changing back and forth. In the end, his breath became continuous. It was impossible to distinguish the direction, and it gradually enshrouded his entire body. Luo Nan's body became slightly hot under this marvelous feeling. It was as if he was wrapped in a warm cloud. It was similar to a sauna, but it was not that stuffy. It was rather transparent. In the end, Luo Nan's energy was completely focused on sensing the changes. He naturally blocked out Xiao Xinyu's whispers. In the end, even his body's senses became fuzzy. It was as if Luo Nan had transformed into a cloud, drifting in the void. The cloud chi expanded and contracted, showing the difference between inside and outside. But when it came down to it, it was a rhythm of entering and exiting. That's right, it was a bit like Ruiwen. Her breath resonated at the pinnacle of perfection, and her body and soul were blended together. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes as if he had awoken from a dream. Shuelei followed Xiao Xinyu's instructions and checked the time on his wristband. 5 minutes and 20 seconds. Ah. Shuelei smiled. From the time you laid down until now, it's been a total of 320 seconds. Luonan was stunned. That's short. He thought that time had passed very quickly, at least an hour or two, but he didn't expect it to be so short. If one only counted the time when he was fully engrossed, it would be less than a minute. Xiao Xinyu glanced at Shuelei's wristband. 7 seconds. 7 seconds? Spirit galloping, heart illuminating the 8 extremities. 7 seconds isn't bad, but it's not short either. Luonan didn't understand at all. Translator Xue finally appeared at this time. He praised, "Sure enough, there is a foundation. The meditative state you just entered is actually a process of body self-examination. It's like turning on a device, reading and loading. The faster your brain, the higher the efficiency. 7 seconds of inner vision, obtaining the edict of void and stillness, is quite amazing." Gym Master Xiao declined to comment on Shuelei's words. "You can't rely on the void. You can't stay full for long. Remember that breathing rhythm. We will proceed to the next step." Though it was hard to understand, it really did seem quite amazing. Luonan couldn't help but have a different kind of confidence in Xiao Xinyu's teachings. He recalled the feeling from before and nodded solemnly. 2 minutes later, Luonan entered the strange state of his body's invisibility once more under Xiao Xinyu's guidance. His body was like a cloud. Warm heat was constantly accumulating, but the rhythm of entering and exiting was there. It expanded and contracted all the time. The heat was not static, but it flowed endlessly. Luonan couldn't see it clearly at first, but after familiarizing himself with it, his senses grew sharper. Slowly, he was able to perceive substance within the invisibility of the cloud. According to Xiao Xinyu's theory, meditative state was just the initial stage of cognition. Cultivation required one to eliminate the established concept of the body, using the feeling of a meditative state to reconstruct it. This wasn't to let one's imagination run wild in the mind. The body was still the body and the aura was still the aura. One just needed to take a complete form. Luonan was familiar with this method. Wasn't this his method of drawing simple sketches? He didn't care about the fineness of the form. He focused on the charm and characteristics. However, Xiao Xinyu gave him a clear image. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.